Chapter 99. Although the mutated lotus flower ant was very strong, its primordial energy was limited after all. It was impossible for it to constantly use primordial energy skills. However, even without using primordial energy skills, the mutated lotus flower ant and the silver-winged flying ant could easily kill a fairy monkey. Fairy monkeys often dropped dimensional crystals, but most of them were speed crystals. Occasionally, they would drop primordial energy crystals, which Zhouwen used to replenish the mutated lotus flower ant's primordial energy. Now, Zhouwen believed that primordial energy crystals were still very useful. Now, he only had 2 companion beasts, so replenishing his primordial energy already required a considerable number of primordial energy crystals. If there were more companion beasts in the future, the number of primordial energy crystals would increase. Unfortunately, there's nothing like a storage bag in-game. Otherwise, I can accumulate primordial energy crystals and use them when I need them. Just as Zhouwen was thinking, he suddenly heard a chime. After a fairy monkey was killed, a dimensional crystal dropped. Zhouwen took a careful look and saw that it had the words Fairy Monkey Crystal written on it. He was immediately delighted. Fairy monkeys typically only had 1 primordial energy skill, the Dragon Gate Fairy skill. He had never heard of a second primordial energy skill. Now that a primordial energy skill crystal dropped, it was undoubtedly the Dragon Gate Fairy skill. Zhouwen controlled the blood-colored avatar to pick up the fairy monkey crystal. Wisps of white light floated out of the crystal and drilled into the blood-colored avatar's body. Zhouwen also felt a strange force enter his body from the phone, opening up a strange aura cycle in his body. It made Zhouwen feel light, as though he could ascend at any moment. As Zhouwen expected, this was the Dragon Gate Fairy Skill's primordial energy skill crystal. The Dragon Gate Fairy Skill's information surged into Zhouwen's brain at the same time, giving him a deep understanding of it. Attained Dragon Gate Fairy Skill, Rank 6. With the Dragon Gate Fairy Skill, I can attempt to clear the Fire God platform. Zhouwen was delighted. Just as he was about to leave Dragon Gate Grotto Dungeon, he suddenly saw another dimensional creature emerge from the Lotus Flower Cave's ceiling. Zhouwen originally imagined that a fairy monkey would emerge and planned on killing it before leaving, but on careful look, he realized that it wasn't a fairy monkey that had emerged from the lotus flower stone sculpture, but a fairy with fluttering clothes. The fairy had a graceful figure, and the ribbons on her body fluttered as she circled in the air. Is this the real flying apsaras? Zhouwen looked enviously at the beautiful fairies. Using wings to fly was somewhat uncomfortable. It was still better to fly freely like fairies. After circling a few times, it flew towards the blood-colored avatar. Zhouwen hurriedly controlled the mutated lotus flower ant and silver-winged flying ant to charge forward to fight. To his surprise, the beautiful fairy waved her hand gently, sending out a ribbon that resembled a white python. Even the silver-winged flying ant's silver wing flash failed to dodge it. The ribbon was like a living creature as it wrapped around the blood-colored avatar and the 2 companion beasts. The flying apsaras in the air pulled, and the ribbon tightened, causing their bodies to explode. The game screen instantly turned black. What a terrifying fairy! Zhouwen marveled inwardly. Zhouwen didn't continue gaming and put away his phone. He planned on dripping his blood to revive and head to the Fire God platform after returning to his dorm. He wanted to see if he could use his rank 6 Dragon Gate Fairy skill to rush up the Fire God platform and see what was engraved on the stone monument. After returning to his dorm, Zhouwen eagerly opened the ancient Sovereign City dungeon. He dripped his blood to revive and rode the silver-winged flying ant towards the Fire God platform. This time, Zhouwen was very prepared. He rode the silver-winged flying ant up the stairs and dodged all the firebirds without killing them. The higher Zhouwen went, the more firebirds appeared. Previously, Zhouwen could only rely on the silver-winged flying ant to fly. Now, apart from the silver-winged flying ant, the Dragon Gate Fairy skill also gave him a pretty good ability to hover in midair. Just as a firebird was about to hit the blood-colored avatar, the blood-colored avatar leaped into the air like a gliding bird. It circled in midair and circled around the firebird's attack before landing on the silver-winged flying ant's back. Although the Dragon Gate fairy skill didn't allow him to really fly, it could allow him to glide in midair for a short period of time. Boom! Seeing that the blood-colored avatar had already charged past its previous limit, the flames on the fire god platform surged into the sky. Flocks of firebirds swooped down like fiery clouds, their numbers immeasurable. "I'm going to die." Zhouwen knew that no matter how good his movement technique was, it was impossible for him to charge through such a dense flock of firebirds. All he could do was risk his life. The lotus flower on the mutated lotus flower ant's head exploded like a bomb, turning into a rain of blood that killed many of the nearby firebirds. Taking advantage of the moment when the firebirds relaxed, the silver-winged flying ant soared into the sky and charged out of the firebirds' encirclement. However, there were just too many firebirds. They immediately gathered and blocked the silver-winged flying ant's path. The silver-winged flying WYRM flapped its wings and charged at the firebirds, colliding with the firebirds in front of it. As for the blood-colored avatar, it leaped up under Zhou Wen's control and circled in the sky like an eagle. The blood-colored avatar dodged the firebirds one after another as it reached a height it had never reached before. Through the gaps between the firebirds, it saw the remaining half of the stone monument on the top of the fire god platform. Zhou Wen's eyes were sharp and he immediately saw that the three largest words on the stone monument were Ancient Sovereign Sutra. And when he saw the three words clearly, it was as though a flame was rising in his body. However, just as he saw the three words clearly, the blood-colored avatar was drowned by the firebirds that filled the sky. The game screen quickly went black. It's impossible to rush up with alacrity alone. However, the height I can reach now allows me to see a portion of the stone monument's contents. If my movement technique is better and I can last a little longer, I can memorize the contents of the monument multiple times. That way, I won't have to reach the top. Zhouwen pondered as he held his phone. Zhouwen felt that this idea was feasible, but his movement technique was still a little lacking. To last longer and see more content, he needed a higher movement technique. After some thought, Zhouwen decided to continue grinding Lotus Flower Cave. It wouldn't be too late to get a rank 9 Dragon Gate fairy skill before prying into the Ancient Sovereign Sutra. While Zhouwen was working hard at grinding fairy monkeys, Wang Fei's first homework mission finally came to an end. Although there were still some students who failed to complete the homework mission, they weren't expelled. They only had some homework points deducted. Wang Fei gathered all her students and announced the second homework mission. It was naturally to head to Mount Laojun to view the wordless monument. Chapter 100. Mount Laojun wasn't in Sunset College. Zhouwen originally didn't wish to go so far, but he had to complete the school's homework mission. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to graduate. Zhouwen had no choice but to go. Li Xian was very excited as he sat on the bus and constantly explained Mount Laojun to Zhouwen. Mount Laojun can be said to be the safest dimensional zone. Although there are quite a number of dimensional creatures there, they basically won't take the initiative to attack humans. As long as you don't provoke them, there won't be any danger on Mount Laojun. The only thing to worry about is the wordless monument we have to see for our homework mission. It's also known as the Carefree Monument. No matter how strong your willpower is, you can't look at it for more than half an hour. Otherwise, it'll be fun. Zhouwen sat by the window and listened to Li Xian explain the situation on Mount Laojun as he grinded the ant nest dungeon. "What's fun?" Zhouwen asked. "That thing is very sinister. Although it won't kill you, it will excite you and make you want to do something," Li Xian said with a chuckle. Mount Laojun was in Luoyang, so it didn't take long for the school bus to arrive. It was different from what Zhouwen had imagined. Mount Laojun wasn't too tall, but it was surrounded by winding pine and cypress trees. There were ancient buildings standing on the mountain peak, making it look like a scene out of a painting. From afar, Mount Laojun looked like a classical ink landscape painting. Wang Fei did a head count and led the group of students up the mountain. There were rabbits, squirrels, and other small animals everywhere on the mountain. There were also flocks of immortal cranes flying in the clouds. They weren't afraid of humans, but they curiously sized up the students from Sunset College. Zhou kept searching for the tiny palm symbol, but he didn't find it. However, he wasn't worried. The mysterious phone had the ability to automatically lock onto the tiny palm symbol, but he had to wait until he was a certain distance away. The most mysterious part of Mount Laojun was the Golden Peak. There were many mysterious ancient buildings there, but unfortunately, no human had ever been able to reach the Golden Peak. Legend had it that people had once seen countless animals crawl out of the mountain. Animals like snakes, insects, rats, and ants crawled up Mount Laojun, covering the entire mountain. Those animals prostrated in front of the Golden Peak like humans for 3 days and 3 nights before dispersing. On Mount Laojun, it was taboo to see blood. Someone had once attempted to start a massacre here and kill the docile dimensional creatures. That person had just killed a dimensional creature that resembled a white rabbit, but for some reason, his expression changed drastically. He turned around and ran down the mountain crazily. When his friend found him the next day, he would hardly have recognized him if his clothes and belongings were not there. That person's entire body was covered in rabbit fur. His mouth became 3 petals and his eyes turned red. He was like a rabbit that was gnawing on the grass. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get up. From then on, he became a lunatic. Ever since then, no one dared to kill on Mount Laojun. Even seeing blood was a great taboo. Legend had it that an epic expert didn't believe in heresy and started a massacre on Mount Laojun. The outcome was tragic. This was all knowledge taught in school, so Zhou didn't know if it was true or not. However, walking on Mount Laojun, he did feel extremely peaceful. There seemed to be a magical power here that calmed his mind. That's the legendary Uneasy Monument. Although it doesn't have a single word or sentence on it, it has magical powers. Your homework mission this time is to sit in front of the Uneasy Monument and look at it for half an hour. Not a second less, but not a second more either. Wang Fei led the students to a platform halfway up the mountain and pointed at a stone monument at the end of the platform. The stone monument was only 2 to 3 meters tall. It looked dilapidated and there was nothing special about it. It stood on the edge of a cliff halfway up the mountain, accompanied by the morning clouds. There was an indescribable feeling amidst its loneliness. It was as though just staring at it could calm one's restless heart. Line up. 10 people in a row. Sit in front of the Uneasy Monument. Wear the sunglasses I prepared for you. Listen to my instructions before taking them off. Zhou Li Xian, don't stand at the back. Come to the first row. Wang Fei arranged for the students to sit in front of the Uneasy Monument. Seeing that Zhou and Li Xian were at the back, she called them to the front. The closer they were to the Uneasy Monument, the stronger the effects. Wang Fei was determined to help Zhou reinvigorate his spirit. Zhou didn't mind. It didn't matter where he sat. After all, there was no risk in looking at the Uneasy Monument. As long as he didn't exceed the time limit, it wouldn't be a problem. The only thing that disappointed Zhou was that he didn't find the tiny palm symbol. The mysterious phone didn't vibrate either. Could it be that Mount Laojun's dimensional zone is above the Golden Peak? Zhou looked at the mountaintop as he thought to himself. When Wang Fei saw that Zhou was still looking around, she thought to herself, after you see the wordless monument, you won't be as distracted as you are now. Alright, pay attention. Take off your sunglasses. Everyone, begin looking at the wordless monument. The time limit is half an hour. If you get up within half an hour, it will be considered a failure. You will have to look at it again for another half an hour. Wang Fei wore her sunglasses and had no intention of taking them off. All she did was press the stopwatch in her hand. These sunglasses were specially made. Wearing them to look at the wordless monument would greatly reduce its influence, but one couldn't keep looking at it. If one looked at it for too long, the sunglasses would be useless. Zhou and the students took off their sunglasses as their gazes landed on the wordless monument. Speaking of which, it was strange. Originally, many students were a little nervous, but after seeing the wordless monument, their nervous feelings immediately vanished. Their entire bodies relaxed, and their hearts were incomparably calm. However, this tranquil mood became somewhat odd with the passage of time. Their minds were still calm, but there seemed to be a surge of energy in their bodies. It made the students feel like their bodies were filled with primordial energy. They wished they could immediately get up and do a set of punches or fight someone. The restlessness that came from their bodies formed a strong contrast with their calm minds. The students naturally didn't dare stand up. They had only sat down for less than 3 minutes. If they stood up now, it would mean failing the homework mission. All they could do was sit there and endure it bitterly. This feeling was like a person with ADHD who had to sit there motionlessly. The discomfort wasn't something outsiders could understand. Zhou also felt the restlessness, but it was only at the beginning. Just as his body began to feel restless, the lost Immortal Sutra that was circulating at a normal speed slowed down. It made Zhou's body feel a little odd as the restlessness gradually vanished. Chapter 101. Just like the previous time, the circulation of the lost Immortal Sutra slowed down. Soon, it seemed like it was about to stop. At the instant the lost Immortal Sutra came to a complete stop, Zhou felt his body suddenly come to a halt. It was like the crisp sound of a lock being locked. The last time, Zhou's senses were rather sluggish, so he didn't have an intense feeling. Now that he carefully sensed it, he realized that it wasn't just the stopping of the circulation of his aura. It was as though his entire body had stopped for a moment. Even his heartbeat had skipped a beat. This pause only lasted for an instant. In the next second, Zhou felt the primordial energy in his body rapidly circulate. However, the circulation method this time was completely different from the lost Immortal Sutra. It wasn't the circulation method of the Small Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, but another primordial energy art that Zhou had never cultivated before. This primordial energy art had a strange feeling of fusing with nature. It was as though his entire body had become a part of the universe, with his heart and the universe's breathing reaching a synchronized frequency. Zhou clearly didn't see a single word on the wordless monument, but he could sense that the primordial energy art came from it. This feeling was very strange and inexplicable. Wang Fei had been observing her students to prevent any accidents from happening to them while they were watching the wordless monument. However, most of Wang Fei's attention was focused on Zhou. She wanted to see Zhou's transformation from a loser who was addicted to games to a diligent genius. But soon, Wang Fei felt that something was amiss. The other students were sweating profusely as they tried their best to suppress the restlessness in their bodies. Their expressions were either solemn or ferocious. Even the students with strong wills were frowning tightly, looking like they were struggling to cope. However, Zhou was completely different. His expression was naturally relaxed as he sat there languidly, as though he was basking in the sun. He didn't feel any pressure at all. Could it be that Zhou is so disheartened that he has given up on himself that even the unwinding monument's power can't remove him? Wang Fei naturally didn't believe such a thing. She only believed that Zhou hadn't endured enough. As time ticked by, the other students' expressions worsened. The students with weaker mental fortitude began to subconsciously twist their bodies as though worms were crawling over them. However, no one stood up. They were all top students from various high schools. They all had natural pride. No one wanted to lose to their classmates, so they all endured bitterly. Li Xian's situation was slightly better. It could be seen that his willpower was rather firm. He sat there motionless and his expression didn't change much. However, the beads of sweat on his forehead told others that it wasn't easy for him to persevere. As for Zhou, he continued sitting lazily beside Li Xian. His expression hadn't changed from beginning to end. Furthermore, he seemed to be getting more and more comfortable. If it wasn't for Wang Fei's request to sit, he might have been lying on the ground. Strange, how could this be? Wang Fei was astonished. She had seen the wordless monument in the past, so she naturally knew how powerful it was. Ignoring the fact that Zhou Wen was only at the mortal stage, even an epic expert would be affected by the wordless monument's power. It was impossible for it to be that easy. 10 minutes have passed, but he still hasn't reacted at all. Could it be? Wang Fei thought of a possibility, and her heart involuntarily skipped a beat. Someone had once guessed that there was a mysterious primordial energy art on the wordless monument, but no one had been able to see it. If one encountered a suitable candidate, the wordless monument might reveal the primordial energy art on it. Could it be that Zhou Wen has a special physique that matches the wordless monument? Although Wang Fei felt that the possibility was extremely small, less than 1 in 100 million, Zhou Wen's present performance was indeed somewhat odd. Wang Fei planned on observing him further. If Zhou Wen really had a special physique that matched the wordless monument, she would have to re-evaluate Zhou Wen's future achievements. If that's the case, Sis Lan has picked up a treasure. She got married and got a cheap son. He actually has a special physique that's 1 in 100 million. That's unbelievable. Wang Fei looked at Zhou Wen with a complicated expression as countless thoughts raced through her mind. Zhou Wen felt extremely relaxed. After the primordial energy art circulated in his body, he could already use it. It was identical to the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra. At the same time, Zhou Wen felt that the primordial energy in his body was extremely abundant. It was as though he could draw heaven-earth primordial energy into his body with every breath he took. Although he didn't try it, Zhou Wen felt that his primordial energy recovery speed was definitely much faster than before. Now, Zhou Wen really wanted to open the game to see how his body's stats had changed. However, in such a situation, it wasn't convenient for him to take out his phone to game. All he could do was endure his desire and continue looking at the wordless monument. Wang Fei waited for quite a while, but Zhou Wen still maintained his lazy expression. However, the wordless monument didn't undergo any special changes. This made Wang Fei doubt her previous judgment. Could it be that Zhou Wen doesn't have a special physique, but that he was born with that expression? Wang Fei looked at Zhou Wen's lazy expression and was puzzled. Half an hour passed quickly, but that was only for Zhou Wen. To the other students, half an hour felt as long as a century. When Wang Fei announced that the mission time was up, almost at the same time, all the students jumped up. Some sprinted back and forth with all their might, some unleashed all their strength to execute a set of techniques, and some kept somersaulting there. There were also some quieter students who circulated the primordial energy art they cultivated despite not having any intense exercise. They quickly circulated it again and again. As for the more irascible students, they even activated their primordial energy skills and punched the mountain rock. It was as though this was the only way to vent the endless energy in their bodies. Li Xian was an especially energetic fellow. However, he didn't hit the rocks. Instead, he sprawled on the ground and quickly did push-up. It was as though he had an electric motor installed. Wang Fei was very satisfied with the performance of her students. Although the wordless monument's power was strange, it was a great aid to teaching as long as it was used well. However, when her gaze landed on Zhou Wen, her good mood from before immediately vanished. Chapter 102. Zhou Wen secretly dripped a drop of blood onto the phone screen. Although the blood-colored avatar from before was still alive, he still did so. This was because only his present blood could represent his present physical state. The blood-colored avatar condensed from his blood had the same stats as before. Zhou Wen, 16 years lifeform level, mortal strength, 10 speed, 10 constitution, 11 primordial energy, 11 primordial energy art, lost immortal sutra primordial energy skill, vigor divine fist, ashen palm, blood meditation, penetrating spear, dragon gate fairy skill primordial energy pet, truth listener, silver winged flying ant, mutated lotus flower ant primordial energy has become 11, but the primordial energy art is still the lost immortal sutra. No new primordial energy art has appeared. Zhou looked at his stats as countless thoughts flashed through his mind. The game only displayed the lost immortal sutra as a primordial energy art, meaning that he hadn't mastered any other primordial energy arts. However, he could freely switch between the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra and the wordless monuments primordial energy art mode. It was truly fascinating. Seeing that the other students were desperately venting their energy and that no one was paying attention to him, Zhou put away his phone and planned on circling Mount Laojun to see if he could find the tiny palm symbol. The last time he mastered the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra, he had obtained Truth Listener, which was suspected to be a mythical creature. Perhaps the wordless monuments primordial energy art had similar benefit. Legend had it that no one could reach Mount Laojuan's golden peak. Perhaps there was an existence similar to the three-faced Buddha inside. Of course, Zhou wouldn't head to Golden Peak himself to test his theory. He only wanted to find the tiny palm symbol and download the Mount Laojun dungeon to attempt it in-game. Zhou had only taken a few steps when Wang Fei appeared in front of him. She stared at him and asked, "Where are you going?" No matter how she looked at him, Zhou didn't look like he was filled with energy that needed venting. He was still as lazy as usual, but his complexion looked much better than before. "I have endless energy all over my body. I need to run to release it." Zhou insincerity was so obvious that he nearly amused Wang Fei. "You want to run, right? Very good. Run from the foot of the mountain to the stone bridge in front of Golden Peak 20 times. I'll be here to watch you. You can't miss a single one," Wang Fei said angrily. "Yes, counselor." Zhou didn't argue as he raised his hands to his ribs and jogged up. The wordless monument was the dividing point of Mount Laojun. If one went further up, they would see true dimensional creatures. And if one went further down, they would see mutated animals from Earth. Zhou ran up the stone steps and didn't take long to see a white antelope standing by the cliff. It was eating a blade of grass that grew on the cliff. The antelope's entire body was snow-white, and the pair of curved horns on its head looked like they were carved from suet-white jade. It was obvious that it was not an antelope from Earth. On its forehead there was a vertical eye. The vertical eye was half open, and one could faintly see a holy white glow flickering in it. As its four hooves moved, a faint white light flowed, as if it was walking on light. Although Zhou didn't know the dimensional creature's level, he could tell that it was definitely extraordinary. The antelope also saw Zhou, but it ignored him. It continued eating the grass on the mountain wall. The grass grew in the gaps between the rocks. Its leaves were withered and yellow, making it look inconspicuous. However, the antelope enjoyed it as though it was a supreme delicacy. The dimensional creatures of Mount Laojun didn't harm humans, so Zhou wasn't worried that the antelope would attack him. He walked closer curiously and carefully observed the withered grass growing on the mountain wall. The grass had 5 leaves. Each leaf was only the length of a middle finger. Furthermore, it was yellow and withered, as though it was about to die. However, in the middle of the leaf was a white flower. It was only the size of a fingernail, as though it was carved from jade. The antelope bit down on the withered grass and the flower. It chewed it repeatedly before swallowing it. Its face was filled with bliss, as though it had obtained great satisfaction. The mountain wall was steep, so the antelope could only eat the withered grass that was relatively close. Zhou looked at the mountain wall and saw that there weren't many withered grass. He couldn't help but have his heart stir. Zhou leaped up and stepped on the mountain wall with his toes. Like a huge bird, he spiraled up. It was none other than the Dragon Gate fairy skill he had just learned. Grabbing a withered grass in midair, Zhou pulled with all his might, but the grass remained motionless. Even with Zhou strength, he failed to pull it out. Zhou held the grass with one hand as his body hung in midair. He turned his head to glance at the antelope and saw that it had no intention of attacking him. As it chewed on the withered grass in its mouth, it looked at Zhou with a rather odd expression, as though it was mocking him. Zhou plucked it twice with all his might, but the withered grass remained motionless. The leaves didn't show any signs of snapping either. It was unimaginably tough. This withered grass is actually so tough. There's probably something odd about it. Zhou had learned from his textbooks that many dimensional zones had strange plants with all sorts of magical powers. Some plants could cause instant death if eaten, while others could greatly increase a human's physique, even allowing them to break through to the next evolution stage. Since the three-eyed antelope could eat the withered grass, it meant that it wasn't poisonous. As for whether humans could eat it, Zhou didn't know. Seeing that he couldn't pluck the grass, Zhou changed his mind and summoned the lotus flower ant bracer. Bones that resembled lotus flower petals wrapped around Zhou's left arm. The edges of the petal bones formed a sawtooth-like blade on the outside of his arm, and the front of his fingers was as sharp as a blade. Zhou stabbed his fingers forward as though he was cutting through tofu, stabbing into the stone wall. He hurriedly dug a few times and broke the rocks around the grass, digging it out along with its root. Landing back on the stone steps, Zhou couldn't figure out what was going on. All he could do was place the grass in his backpack. When he turned his head to take a look, he realized that the remaining withered grass had been eaten clean by the three-eyed antelope. Zhou thought nothing of it as he was only curious. He continued running up the mountaintop. Mount Laojun was known as the safest dimensional zone. As long as he didn't cross Golden Peak's door, there wouldn't be any danger. Even if humans wanted to kill Zhou, they typically wouldn't choose a place like Mount Laojun to do so. As Zhou jogged, he sized up his surroundings, but he didn't see the tiny palm symbol. Chapter 103. Zhou could tell that the three-eyed antelope wasn't using brute force. Otherwise, it would have been able to bite through the tough withered grass. Zhou's backpack would definitely be torn to shreds if it were to give it a casual tug. The antelope bit at the zipper in an attempt to open it. It was very likely that it wanted to eat the withered grass that Zhou had dug out. Zhou took off his backpack and carried it in his arms. With his back facing the three-eyed antelope, he continued walking up the mountain. After all, the dimensional creatures on Mount Laojun wouldn't harm him, so he wasn't afraid that the antelope could do anything to him. The antelope clearly didn't give up as it circled around Zhou, attempting to reach its head into the backpack. All Zhou could do was constantly move the backpack to avoid the antelope's head. Although the antelope didn't use brute force, it was surprisingly fast. Zhou wasn't paying attention as it unzipped his backpack with its mouth. This three-eyed antelope is extraordinary. It wants to eat withered grass so much, so the grass must be extraordinary. With this in mind, Zhou hurriedly hugged his backpack tightly to his chest, pressing down on the opening of the backpack. The three-eyed antelope didn't give up as it burrowed its head into Zhou's chest, determined to eat the grass in his backpack. Although the three-eyed antelope didn't use brute force, its physical strength, speed, and reaction were much stronger than Zhou's. Zhou couldn't beat it and was about to be succeeded. Zhou was indignant, but ignoring the fact that he couldn't fight on Mount Laojun, even if he could, he didn't dare attack the antelope. The withered grass was already revealed. Just as the antelope was about to bite it, Zhou's heart suddenly stirred as he spat at the grass. The spit landed on the withered grass, immediately leaving specks of saliva on it. The three-eyed antelope, which had already opened its mouth, was stunned. It looked at the withered grass that was covered in saliva before looking at Zhou with an odd expression. "Do you still want it? If not, I'm taking it away." Zhou generously opened his backpack, but the three-eyed antelope didn't react at all. All it did was look at the withered grass with a complicated expression. Seeing that it didn't react, Zhou zipped up his backpack and ran up the mountain again. The scenery of Mount Laojun was really good, but unfortunately, Zhou didn't see the tiny palm symbol. Although the three-eyed antelope didn't eat the withered grass, it didn't leave either. It slowly followed behind Zhou without any intention of attacking him. It was unknown what it was up to. Mount Laojun wasn't very tall to begin with, but after the dimensional storms, the space on the mountain seemed to stretch. Zhou ran for quite a while before he gradually approached the mountaintop. From afar, one could see the picturesque scenery at the top of the mountain. There were ancient buildings of varying heights. The buildings could not be considered grand, but they were built at the top of the mountain, surrounded by rosy clouds. It was like the residence of an immortal from the legends. At the end of the stone steps, there was a wooden building that looked like a memorial archway. The words "Central Heaven Gate" were carved on it. In front of the memorial arch, there was a stone statue. An old man was riding on the back of a stone bull. He was gazing at the sky, while the stone bull turned its head to look at the horizon. Zhou had read the information on Mount Laojun before coming and knew that this stone statue was likely the ancestor of Taoism, Li'er. Before the dimensional storms, although Mount Laojun was a scenic spot, it hadn't been developed well. Therefore, not many tourists came here. Instead, the locals often came here to train their bodies and watch the sunrise over the sea of clouds at Golden Peak. From the information, the stone statue was carved in recent times, so there shouldn't be anything special about it. However, when Zhou approached the stone statue, the mysterious phone vibrated. Zhou hurriedly took out the mysterious phone. It had already automatically activated the camera function and quickly locked onto the stone bull's forehead. There was a familiar palm symbol. "I've finally found it." Zhou was delighted. Before coming to Mount Laojun, Wang Fei had repeatedly exhorted everyone not to cross the Central Heaven Gate or they would have to bear the consequences. If he still couldn't find the tiny palm symbol here, Zhou wouldn't dare continue venturing deeper. The screen on the phone was already showing that it was loading. He had definitely obtained the Mount Laojun dungeon. Just as Zhou was rejoicing, he suddenly felt a violent impact on his back as he involuntarily flew up. The force was extremely powerful, preventing Zhou from controlling his strength. However, the force was extremely strange. Although it was powerful and heavy, it didn't injure Zhou's muscles or bones. It only made him fly uncontrollably into the Central Heaven Gate. In midair, Zhou turned his head and saw the three-eyed antelope standing where he had been standing. It raised its head and gave him a nefarious smile. "Holy sh*t, aren't the dimensional creatures of Mount Laojun very kind? This three-eyed antelope actually holds a grudge. In the blink of an eye, it took revenge. Rumors really can't be trusted." Zhou was secretly depressed. He had always been wary of the three-eyed antelope, but just now, he had been sent flying without hearing anything at all. The time he spent in midair was very short as Zhou slammed into the Central Heaven Gate. After landing on the ground, Zhou immediately stood up with a carp flip, hoping to rush out of the Central Heaven Gate. However, when he looked back, Zhou was immediately stunned. He had clearly passed the memorial arch with the words "Central Heaven Gate," but when he looked back, he realized that the memorial arch, along with the stone statue and stone steps outside, had vanished. He had come from a precipitous cliff surrounded by clouds. Was it an illusion? Zhou carefully came to the cliff and looked down. A gust of mountain wind blew over, nearly blowing him off. Meh! A goat's cry sounded nearby. Alarmed, he hurriedly turned his head and saw the three-eyed antelope standing on a nearby rock, looking at him mockingly. "In this day and age, I can't even offend an antelope." Zhou licked his lips and ignored the antelope. Instead, he picked up his phone to take a look. He finally understood that the three-eyed antelope didn't dare injure him on Mount Laojun. Therefore, it had sent him to the Golden Peak, hoping to use the Golden Peak's power to deal with him. Zhou made up his mind not to proceed forward. He stood there and waited. Then, he used his phone to scout the way and see what was strange about Mount Laojuan's Golden Peak. There was no loading screen on the phone screen. There was an additional stone ox icon on the desktop with the words, Mount Laojun, written on it. Just as Zhou was about to tap on Mount Laojuan's icon, he suddenly felt something amiss. He saw the hairs in his pores gradually thicken like grass sprouts. They even sprouted leaves. He was about to turn into a human-shaped grass jar, leaving Zhou alarmed. Chapter 104. The moment the wordless monument's primordial energy art appeared, the grass sprouts on Zhou body immediately stopped growing. Furthermore, they gradually degenerated and soon, Zhou body returned to normal. When the three-eyed antelope saw this scene, a look of surprise flashed in its eyes. It stood nearby and sized up Zhou. Thankfully, the wordless monument's primordial energy art worked. Zhou heaved a long sigh of relief and turned to look at the path he had come from. He saw that it was still a towering cliff without the door he had come from. Forget it. I'll find a way out in-game. After all, I have the wordless monument's primordial energy art. As long as that antelope doesn't cause trouble for me, I shouldn't be in too much danger for the time being. Zhou subconsciously glanced at the antelope's spot and his heart skipped a beat. The antelope that had been standing not far away had vanished. Meh! The antelope's cry sounded behind Zhou, causing him to break out into a cold sweat. He turned his head and indeed, he saw the antelope standing behind him, sizing him up with its eyes. That wasn't all. As the antelope sized him up, it circled him as though it wanted to see his entire body clearly, not missing any detail. Zhou didn't know what it was up to as he was on full alert. If the antelope really wanted to harm him, he couldn't sit still even if he knew he was no match for it. However, the antelope had no intention of taking action. It circled Zhou a few times as the puzzlement in its eyes intensified. Brother Antelope, let's make a deal. I'll wash that grass and return it to you. How about we write off our grudges? Zhou carefully said to the three-eyed antelope. If he had known that the antelope was so vengeful, he wouldn't have dug up the grass. However, the antelope ignored him and came close to Zhou, nudging him with its head as it walked in. The antelope's strength was immense. Zhou felt that his strength was completely unable to withstand it. He was pushed by the force and involuntarily walked in. Countless thoughts raced through Zhou's mind, but he ultimately didn't risk his life to fight the antelope. The ancient buildings on the Golden Peak were extremely massive. In the middle was a stone bridge that connected them. Beneath the stone bridge was a lingering sea of clouds. Walking on the stone bridge made him feel like he was walking in the sky. Brother Antelope, where are you pushing me to? Can I walk by myself? Zhou asked. The three-eyed antelope seemed to understand his words and stopped nudging him with its head. Instead, it bleated at him and walked off in a certain direction. Zhou knew that his speed and strength were far inferior to the antelope's. It was highly likely that the fellow was an epic creature. It wasn't realistic to escape from it, so all he could do was follow behind it. The antelope led Zhou through the ancient buildings. After crossing many stone bridges, they arrived in front of a Taoist temple. Zhou focused his eyes and saw the words, Great Pure Temple, written on the Taoist temple's plaque. Zhou only had a superficial understanding of Taoism, but he knew that the Grand Pure One was one of the three Pure Ones of Taoism. Among the Jade Pure One, Supreme Pure One, and Grand Pure One, the Grand Pure One was the most famous. The name of Grand Supreme Elderly Lord was probably known by everyone in the East District. This Taoist temple was called Tai Ching Temple, and the one worshipped within was undoubtedly the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord. There can't be a living old Lord Taishang inside, right? Zhou recalled his encounter at Small Buddha Temple and couldn't help but speed up the circulation of the wordless monument's primordial energy art. The antelope came to the entrance of Tai Ching Temple, but it didn't enter. Its figure phased away, and by the time Zhou Wen reacted, it had already appeared behind him and slammed him into Tai Ching Temple. Zhou Wen was already mentally prepared, so he wasn't surprised. The antelope definitely wasn't bringing him here for a tour. After steadying himself, Zhou Wen sized up the situation inside Tai Ching Temple. Behind the door was a huge yard that looked rather ancient. The ground was covered in dust and fallen leaves, as though no one had stepped foot here for 1,000 years. In fact, according to what Zhou Wen knew, before the dimensional storms descended, Tai Ching Temple had a flourishing incense offerings. It had only been a few decades. You are a disciple of my Taoist sect. You can choose one of the 3 pure talismans on the table. An elderly voice sounded from an unknown location. It echoed in Tai Ching Temple as though it came from all directions. It was impossible to tell where the voice came from. Yes, master. Zhou Wen didn't dare hesitate. After bowing, his gaze landed on an offering table in the yard. After he entered, he saw 3 talismans on the offering table. They looked completely different. One was like flawless white jade, one was forged from metal, and the last was carved from wood. The 3 talismans were only the size of a palm. They looked similar, but the patterns engraved on them were different. Zhou Wen didn't understand the meaning of the talismans, and his understanding of Taoism was very limited. All he could do was guess. Small Buddha temple's 3-faced Buddha got me to choose a mythical companion egg, but this place wants me to choose talismans. I wonder what use those talismans have? This is Tai Ching Temple. Logically speaking, the 3 talismans should be related to Taishang Laojun, but that might not be the case. The 3 pure ones of Taoism are one to begin with. Perhaps the 3 talismans represent the 3 pure ones. If it's really as I guessed, the Jade Talisman probably represents the Jade Pure One's heavenly lord of primordial origin. The Wooden Talisman is related to nature, so it probably represents Taishang Laojun. As for the Golden Talisman, it should represent the Prime Clear Sect Master of Heaven. Which one should I choose? Zhou Wen was purely making wild guesses. He didn't know if that was the case. With Zhou Wen's taste, he would likely take the Jade Talisman, but considering that this was Tai Ching Temple, Zhou Wen hesitated for a moment before taking the Wooden Talisman. The instant Zhou Wen picked up the Wooden Talisman, he saw the light in front of him change. Tai Ching Temple dissipated like a dream. When Zhou Wen saw the scene in front of him clearly, he realized that he had returned to the stone statue of his father riding an ox. If it wasn't for the Wooden Talisman in his hand, Zhou Wen would have suspected that he was dreaming. Meh! A sheep's cry sounded beside him. When he saw the 3-eyed antelope, Zhou Wen confirmed that everything that had happened wasn't an illusion. He didn't dare stay any longer. Although Mount Laojuan's golden peak wasn't as sinister as small Buddha temple, it still made Zhou Wen feel apprehensive. He ran down the mountain with the Wooden Talisman in hand. When he reached the mountainside, he saw Wang Fei and his classmate. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. Zhou Wen, I told you to run. Where did you go? Why did you bring an antelope back? Wang Fei said with a frown when she saw Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen hurriedly turned his head when he heard that and saw that the 3-eyed antelope had followed him down. However, the vertical eye on its head had vanished. Apart from being completely white, it looked no different from an ordinary antelope. Chapter 105. In the Federation's Special Inspection Bureau's exclusive hospital. Liz, answer me truthfully. Is there any exaggeration or falsehood in the report you provided? Qiao Siyuan asked Liz, who was lying on the bed, with a heavy expression. Minister, I've received strict intelligence training. I know the importance of accurate intelligence. I can guarantee that there's no exaggeration or falsehood in the report I wrote. I can be responsible for every word in the report. Liz struggled to get up, but she was held down by Qiao Siyuan. You just receive treatment so you can still move. Only by recuperating will you have the ability to continue fighting. Qiao Siyuan consoled Liz before flipping through her report and saying, I've already done a detailed investigation. There's indeed a mysterious stone monument in Small Buddha Temple. Just like other mysterious lands, the primordial energy art on the stone monument can't be mastered by anyone unless that person has a special physique that matches it. In that case, that Zhou. Liz gritted her teeth when she thought of Zhou. If not for him, she wouldn't have been injured, much less have her sea of energy destroyed. Qiao Siyuan nodded slightly. According to your report, he was able to enter the temple hall without suffering any harm, but you, who had the headless angel's protection, were nearly killed. There are only two possibilities. One is that he has a guardian companion beast that's stronger than the headless angels, preventing him from being harmed. The other possibility is that he has a special physique that matches the Small Buddha Temple's lineage. That's why he wasn't attacked. I'm leaning toward the latter. Liz said hatefully, the Yin family must have long known that Zhou has a special physique. That's why they thought so highly of him. They even gave him the qualification that originally belonged to Enjing. If he was lucky enough to obtain another special physique, with 2 talents, he might have a chance of breaking through to the mythical realm. The Yin family really schemed well. I think even Ouyang Lan and Zhou Lingfeng's marriage was probably just a transaction. Upon thinking of the Yin family, Liz similarly gnashed her teeth in hatred. She was the daughter of a senator in the House of Lords after all. And Tianzhua had crippled her sea of energy without any hesitation. She had to avenge him. Qiao Siyuan said indifferently, the influence dimensional zones have on various parts of the world is becoming more and more obvious, causing the barriers between regions to increase. The local factions have always wanted to use this opportunity to escape the Federation's control. The Yin family is even more ambitious. They have primordial gold mines and have been nurturing their own army. They have even used all means to find a way to break through to the mythical stage. Their ambitions are clear. Minister, we can't let the Yin family continue. We have to kill Zhou in the cradle. As long as the Yin family doesn't produce a mythical expert, they will have qualms and won't easily betray the Federation, Liz said agitatedly. Don't get too excited. Your injuries haven't healed yet. After placating Liz, Qiao Siyuan continued, ignoring the fact that Zhou was deliberately nurtured by the Yin family. Just the fact that he has a special physique means that he has to be used by our Federation. We can't let him become a tool for the Yin family. However, Luoyang is ultimately the Yin family's territory. After what happened the last time, the Yin family will definitely protect Zhou even more tightly. It's probably impossible to touch him in Luoyang. Are we just going to watch helplessly as the Yin family does whatever they want? Liz said angrily. Of course not. However, everything requires a method and method. The Federation still needs the Yin family's primordial gold mines, so we can't touch them for the time being. However, since Zhou has obtained that spot, he will definitely head to our Federation's Holy Land. Without the Yin family's protection, it will be much easier for us to bring him back, Qiao Siyuan said indifferently. We'll let him off easy. Let him live a few more days, Liz said hatefully. Qiao Siyuan exhorted again. Don't tell anyone about Zhou Wen's special physique for the time being to prevent any complications. Minister, don't worry. I know what to do. Liz nodded slightly. Special physiques had too many implications. Even in the Senate there were different voices. The various factions also placed great importance on special physique. If the other factions were to learn that Zhou had a special physique, things might develop in a direction they couldn't control. This was something Qiao Siyuan and Liz didn't wish to see. Qiao Siyuan was considering his job, but Liz only wanted to end Zhou with her own hands. In Sunset College's Four Seasons garden dormitory, Zhou sat on a chair, staring at a white antelope. The antelope had been following him ever since he returned from Mount Laojun. It had even squeezed onto the school bus and returned to school with Zhouwen. Zhouwen wished to chase the fellow away, but he knew very well how terrifying the antelope was. If he were to forcefully chase it away, the fellow might start a massacre in a fit of rage. When that happened, not only Zhouwen, but all the students and teachers in the class might suffer as well. Therefore, although Zhouwen wanted to chase the antelope away, he couldn't forcefully do so. Thankfully, it was very common to use companion beasts in Sunset College. It wasn't too conspicuous for Zhouwen to have an antelope with him. However, Li Xian and the other students mocked him when he returned. "I say, Zhouwen, your luck isn't bad. A pet actually automatically recognizes you as its owner. Unfortunately, this is only a mutated antelope from Mount Laojun and not a high-level dimensional creature. If this fellow were an epic dimensional creature, you would be in for a treat. What a pity." Li Xian was naturally teasing Zhouwen when he said those words. However, Zhouwen knew very well that this fellow definitely had epic powers. "Brother Antelope, I've already washed your grass. Don't worry and eat it. I used a natural, green, and pollution-free cleaning solution and washed it more than 10 times. It's very clean. Leave quickly after you finish eating it. There's too much dust on campus and the pollution is severe. It's a mess with all sorts of people and noise. How can it compare to a blessed land like Mount Laojun? It's too hard on you to live here. It's best you return quickly." Zhouwen placed the washed, withered grass on the table in front of the antelope and persuaded it earnestly. The antelope glanced at the withered grass on the table and didn't even take a whiff. It turned around and walked to the sofa by the side. It lay down on the sofa and closed its eyes comfortably. "Brother Antelope, although you are indeed very powerful, you have to know that this is Sunset College. There are many epic experts here. If they discover that you are a wild dimensional creature, I'm afraid." Seeing that he couldn't move it with emotion, Zhouwen planned on using reason. Chapter 106. Zhouwen felt a headache coming on, but he couldn't think of a way to chase the antelope away. All he could do was allow it to occupy his sofa. "I'll think of a solution slowly." Zhouwen returned to his room, closed the door, and lay in bed. Only then did he take out his mysterious phone and open the Mount Laojun dungeon. He wanted to try and see if he could enter the Grand Pure Temple again, in-game, and choose another talisman. The last time he entered Small Buddha Temple in-game, he had chosen Truth Listener. Later, he went to Small Buddha Temple in real life, but he didn't discover anything. The three-faced Buddha wasn't activated by him either. Zhouwen believed that it was because he already had Truth Listener on him. The three-faced Buddha could sense it, so it didn't give him a chance to choose. Therefore, Zhouwen first placed the wooden talisman he had chosen to the side and locked it in a box before switching on his phone to enter the Mount Laojun dungeon. The Mount Laojun dungeon's environment in-game was identical to Mount Laojun in real life. However, the game dungeon began with the ox-riding stone statue. The blood-colored avatar entered the game and stepped through the central heaven gate. In the beginning, Zhouwen didn't switch to the wordless monument's primordial energy art. Instead, he used the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra, but grass grew crazily on his body the moment he entered. It was useless. Zhouwen hurriedly switched to the wordless monument's primordial energy art before the blood-colored avatar gradually returned to normal. It's indeed the same logic as Small Buddha Temple. I have to master the corresponding primordial energy art to be able to come and go freely. Otherwise, death is the only outcome. Zhouwen roughly understood the rules of these mysterious places. However, Zhouwen didn't know that people with true Buddhas and Tao bodies didn't need to cultivate primordial energy arts to enter Small Buddha Temple or Mount Laojun safely. The reason why Zhouwen needed to master a primordial energy art to be able to enter freely was that he didn't have any special physique. It was all because of the lost Immortal Sutra's powers that confused those terrifying existences, allowing Zhouwen to obtain benefits that only people with special physiques could obtain. Furthermore, Zhouwen was different from people with real special physique. Those with real special physiques like the Buddha body could only enter places like small Buddha temple. If they entered Mount Laojun, they would be no different from ordinary people and wouldn't obtain any benefit. The Lost Immortal Sutra's powers allowed Zhouwen to impersonate many physiques and obtain benefits that he couldn't originally obtain. The pavilions on Mount Laojun in-game were all above the clouds, looking like an immortal palace in the heavens. Zhouwen didn't wander around randomly. His memory was very good, so he still remembered the path that the antelope had taken him clearly. He walked forward according to his memories. However, after walking for a short distance, he saw a red-crowned crane standing on the stone bridge in front of him. The crane was perched on the stone railing on one side of the stone bridge. Its snow-white feathers seemed to be carved from jade, and they emitted a sparkling divine light. One look and one could tell that it was not an ordinary creature from Earth. The game seems to be somewhat different from reality. When I left with the antelope, I didn't see any other dimensional creatures. Zhouwen looked at the crane warily. He didn't know if it would attack him. Just as Zhouwen was pondering over it, reality gave him an extremely cruel answer. The crane opened its mouth and sucked at the blood-colored avatar. Zhouwen hurriedly controlled the blood-colored avatar to summon a companion beast to fight, but he didn't have a chance to do so. The blood-colored avatar and the companion beast were sucked into the immortal crane's mouth before the game screen went black. The immortal crane is probably a top epic creature, right? Zhouwen helplessly put down his phone. The immortal crane was just too powerful. Zhouwen's present strength was insufficient to challenge it, or rather, he didn't have the right to fight it. It was useless going again. I should study the wooden talisman first and see what use it has. Zhouwen had already given up on entering Mount Laojun again. It was impossible for him to gain anything there before he advanced to the epic stage. He took the wooden talisman out of the box and found it warm to the touch. It was as though a refreshing aura emitted from the wooden talisman, energizing him. How do I use it? Zhouwen attempted to circulate the wordless monument's primordial energy art before injecting his primordial energy into the wooden talisman. When using items transformed from companion beasts, this was how they were used. Zhouwen was only giving it a try. However, the moment his primordial energy entered the wooden talisman, the runes on it lit up. Then, Zhouwen felt as though the wooden talisman had turned into a huge water pump. The primordial energy in his body seemed to burst a dam as it flowed towards the wooden talisman. Boom! Zhouwen felt unbearable pain all over his body as though his mind was about to explode. In just an instant, his primordial energy was completely drained. This feeling was all too familiar to Zhouwen. It was the feeling of hatching a companion egg that exceeded his capabilities. Could it be that the wooden talisman is actually a companion egg? As this thought surfaced in Zhouwen's mind, the wooden talisman in his hand had already transformed into a refreshing aura that imprinted itself on his palm. The pain of having his bone marrow drained also vanished at that moment. Zhouwen slumped to the ground as though he had collapsed, panting heavily. Although it was only a short instant, Zhouwen felt his cheeks slimming down as dark circles appeared under his eyes. Thankfully, after cultivating the wordless monument's primordial energy art, his primordial energy recovered much faster. Even without using primordial energy crystals, resting for a while allowed his primordial energy to recover quite a bit. It made Zhouwen feel much better. He raised his palm and saw that there was an additional leaf tattoo on it. The leaf was green like emerald, and there were crystalline white tendons in it. It looked like it was formed from frost. Information about a companion beast appeared in Zhouwen's mind. This information was typically obtained after contracting a companion beast. It was very vague information, so Zhouwen had no way of understanding the companion beast in detail through this information. Therefore, he took out his phone and dripped a drop of blood on the phone's screen before checking the blood-colored avatar's information. Indeed, there was an additional companion beast in the blood-colored avatar's companion beast column. Banana Fairy. Mortal, evolvable, strength, 11 speed, 11 constitution, 11 primordial energy, 11 talent skill, Grand Wind companion form. Fan its stats are the same as Truth Listener's, but why does it only have 1 talent skill? Truth Listener still has 4 companion beasts of the same grade. Even if there aren't 4, there should be at least 2 or 3, right? Zhouwen was somewhat disappointed. Although such a companion beast could grow to the mythical stage in the future, who knew how long it would take to nurture it? Its present stats were more important. A single skill was clearly not as useful as 4 skills. Chapter 107. Green light flashed as a cute, palm-sized girl dressed in green appeared in front of Zhouwen. She sat on an emerald-like banana leaf, and floated in midair, as though she was sitting on a boat swaying on a lake under the moon. Why are mythical companion beasts so small? Zhouwen extended his hand and beckoned at Banana Fairy. The girl flew over with the banana leaf, and when she landed in Zhouwen's hand, she had already transformed into a small green fan. The fan was only the size of Zhouwen's palm. Its leaves were crystalline like green jadeite, and its design was exquisite and beautiful, but it was too small. It's so small. Isn't it child's play to use it as a weapon? Zhouwen looked around and felt that it wasn't suitable to use the tiny fan as a weapon. Furthermore, he had never learned any martial arts techniques to use a fan as a weapon. However, Zhouwen soon realized that Banana Fairy was somewhat different from ordinary companion beasts. Typical companion beasts couldn't use their talent skills when they were in their companion form, but Banana Fairy could still use her talent skills when in her companion form. Zhouwen held the tiny fan and fanned it at the sandbag he used for practice. Immediately, an invisible cold wind blew over, causing the sandbag to sway left and right. Is that all? Zhouwen was somewhat disappointed. Although the strength of the wind wasn't bad, it wasn't very lethal. Zhouwen reached out to press down on the swaying sandbag, but he was slightly taken aback. When his fingers touched the sandbag, he realized that there was a layer of frost on the surface. The spot his fingers touched was ice cold. The Grand Wind has the power of coldness, but such coldness doesn't seem to be enough to kill my opponent, right? With this in mind, Zhouwen suddenly had an idea. The Grand Wind is a cold wind. I wonder if it can restrain the firebirds on the Fire God platform. If it can restrain the firebirds, wouldn't I be able to ascend the Fire God platform? Zhouwen only had this thought and didn't hold much hope. After all, Banana Fairy was only at the mortal stage. Even if she could grow to the mythical stage in the future, her current standard was likely inferior to top legendary companion beasts. As for those firebirds, each one had the power of a legendary stage. With this in mind, Zhouwen opened the ancient Imperial City dungeon on his mysterious phone. He planned on giving it a try at the Fire God platform. If Banana Fairy's Grand Wind could restrain the firebirds, it wouldn't be difficult to ascend the Fire God platform as long as he nurtured her to the legendary stage, even if she couldn't ascend it now. Zhouwen had already grinded the ancient Sovereign City dungeon countless times. He came to Fire God platform once again and rode the silver-winged flying ant up the stairs. Soon a firebird flew down from Fire God platform. Seeing a firebird fly down, the blood-colored avatar gripped the banana fan tightly and fanned out a gust of Grand Wind at it. A gust of cold wind rushed towards the firebird. The firebird's body was like a flame that had fallen into water. It was instantly extinguished without a trace, not even leaving a trace. Zhouwen was dumbfounded. He wished he could hug the phone and kiss it. What a treasure! The Grand Wind actually has such a restraining effect on the firebird. There's hope for me to ascend the Fire God platform. Another 2 firebirds flew down from the top of the Fire God platform. Zhouwen ordered the blood-colored avatar to fan over again, still using the Grand Wind skill. However, to his surprise, the game system's notification appeared before the Grand Wind appeared. Insufficient primordial energy. Unable to release Grand Wind. Holy sh*t, Banana Fairy only has enough primordial energy to use Grand Wind once? Zhou hurriedly controlled the blood-colored avatar to rush down the Fire God platform. Without the Grand Wind, it wasn't enough to rely on the blood-colored avatar's abilities to rush up the Fire God platform. After finding a safe spot, Zhou began studying Banana Fairy and the Grand Wind skill. Banana Fairy's primordial energy had indeed been expended, leaving nothing behind. After grinding a circle of skeleton soldiers nearby, the primordial energy crystals that dropped replenished Banana Fairy's primordial energy. Zhou got Banana Fairy to use Grand Wind once, and indeed, 11 primordial energy points were drained. Zhou made Banana Fairy turn into a fan and attempted to inject his primordial energy into the banana leaf fan to see if he could use Grand Wind. In the end, he could use it, but Zhou's 11 primordial energy points were drained in one go, leaving nothing behind. With my primordial energy, I can only use Grand Wind twice in a short period of time. Can I rush up the Fire God platform with 2 Grand Winds? Zhou frowned in thought. Grand Wind is an area of effect primordial energy skill. If I can attract the firebirds to a certain range, it's not impossible to finish off a large number of firebirds in one go. If it's used properly, I might be able to use 2 Grand Winds to rush up the Fire God platform, Zhou thought to himself. With hope of reaching the Fire God platform, Zhou didn't hesitate to make an attempt. With the silver-winged flying ant's speed and flying ability, coupled with Zhou's Dragon Gate Fairy skill, the blood-colored avatar charged up while consciously luring the firebirds in one direction. As Banana Fairy was only at the mortal stage, the Grand Wind's range was limited. If he wanted to eliminate the firebirds as much as possible, he could only try his best to lure them in one direction. More than 10 firebirds were lured to one spot by Zhou and were almost at their limits. Without any hesitation, Zhou ordered the blood-colored avatar to hold the banana fan and gently fan at the flock of firebirds. More than 10 firebirds were instantly extinguished by the Grand Wind. Only 2 firebirds that weren't within the Grand Wind's range luckily escaped the calamity. Zhou was delighted as he controlled the blood-colored avatar to continue charging up the Fire God platform. Seeing that he had covered more than half the distance, the flock of firebirds on the Fire God platform erupted as they charged down like a fiery cloud that blotted out the sky. The blood-colored avatar once again activated the Grand Wind and fanned at the fiery cloud. Immediately, a huge hole was blown through the fiery cloud by the Grand Wind. It was unknown how many firebirds were reduced to ashes. Taking this opportunity, the silver-winged flying ant flapped its 4 wings and continued charging up the hole. The firebirds behind it swept back and chased after the silver-winged flying ant. The silver-winged flying ant couldn't fly high in one go. When it reached its highest point, the blood-colored avatar stomped on its back and leaped into the air with Dragon Gate Fairy skill, circling above the Fire God platform like an eagle. This time, Zhou finally saw the complete Fire God platform. Apart from the stone monument with the ancient sovereign sutra engraved on it, there was a stone furnace in front of it. The flames in the furnace flickered, and the firebirds flew out from the stone furnace. At that moment, a large flock of firebirds was spewing out from the stone furnace. Zhou ignored them as his gaze landed on the stone monument with the ancient sovereign sutra engraved on it. He wanted to memorize as many words as he could. He had only memorized about 8 words when the firebirds surrounded him. The game screen quickly went black. Chapter 108. Wang Fei had been in a bad mood recently. In her original plan, Zhou should have worked hard in his cultivation after viewing the unwinding monument. However, Zhou was indeed working hard, but he was working hard to game and not cultivate. He clearly has such good talent, so why is he a geek who is addicted to games? Wang Fei really couldn't figure out what was on Zhou Wen's mind. From the looks of it, it's impossible to rely on external forces. I have to give him some stimulation. Wang Fei thought about how to motivate Zhou Wen and make him stand up again. However, no matter how she thought about it, she couldn't think of a good solution. Wang Fei knew very well that she couldn't force a teacher. To change a student's mindset, she needed a suitable opportunity. Therefore, Wang Fei planned on observing him for a period of time and making plans during Sunset College's first comprehensive test. A month after the start of the semester, there would be a school-wide examination. The examination did not discriminate by age, and students of all classes and grades had to participate. The examination questions were also the same, and this determined a student's ranking within the academy. Wang Fei felt that if Zhou Wen could see the true strength of the top students in the college, he might be motivated. Zhou Wen led an ordinary and fulfilling life. He grinded dungeons crazily every day before finally dying at the Fire God platform and memorizing a few words of the ancient Sovereign Sutra. Now, Zhou Wen hated the fact that the ancient Sovereign Sutra was too long. After going there so many times, he had only memorized less than half of the sutra. He didn't know when he would finish memorizing it. The antelope stayed in Zhou Wen's dorm lazily, following him around all day to eat and drink. It showed no signs of leaving. Originally, Zhou Wen could eat anything he wanted without going to the cafeteria. However, after this fellow came, it ate fresh vegetables every day. Zhou Wen had no choice but to go to the cafeteria to think of a solution. Zhou Wen had the intention of ignoring it, but as long as it couldn't eat, it would keep following him. It didn't do anything out of line. All it did was circle around Zhou Wen and nudge its head against him, preventing him from staying quiet. It was impossible for it to game, forcing Zhou Wen to prepare food for it. Zhou Wen originally imagined that his life would continue like this, but Ah Xing's arrival shattered his peaceful life. "Young Master Wen, Madam asked me to bring you over." Ah Xing was always humble and polite. Even a hot-tempered person would find it difficult to flare up at him. "Sislan, why are you looking for me?" Zhou Wen asked with a frown. If it wasn't something particularly important, he wasn't willing to go to the infamily. "Madam wants me to tell you that she's waiting for you in a shop in the city. She has a personal matter that she needs your help with," Ah Xing said. "All right." Zhou Wen nodded slightly. Since he wasn't going to the infamily and he wasn't averse to Ouyanglan, it wasn't a big deal. Ah Xing drove Zhou Wen out of Sunset College. Originally, students weren't allowed to leave after school reopened unless it was a holiday. However, the person Ah Xing wanted to pick up was clearly not one of them. When the soldiers guarding the door saw the pass Ah Xing took out, they chose to let him pass. Ah Xing wasn't lying. They weren't going to the infamily's residence. Zhou Wen originally imagined that Ouyanglan would meet him at a restaurant or coffee shop, a clothing store, or an accessory store. However, when the car stopped, Zhou Wen realized that they had come to a dimensional crystal shop named Xiuan. Zhou Wen felt that the name of the dimensional crystal shop was a little familiar. After some thought, he recalled that there was a name card in the package sent by the principal. The owner of the name card was the owner of the Xiuan crystal shop, Qin Xiuan. As nothing related happened after receiving the package, Zhou Wen didn't pay any attention to the name card. Only when he saw the Xiuan crystal shop's signboard today did he recall the name card. I wonder if that string of numbers was casually written on Qin Xiuan's name card, or if it really has something to do with Qin Xiuan. Several thoughts flashed through Zhou Wen's mind. It was definitely impossible for him to show the name card to Qin Xiuan. Before figuring out what the numbers on the name card meant, Zhou Wen didn't plan on showing it to anyone. "Little one, come over quickly." After the car stopped, Ouyanglan, who was dressed in sportswear, stood on the steps in front of the shop and waved at Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen alighted and came in front of Ouyanglan. He politely asked, "Sislan, how can I help you?" Ouyang Lan smiled and said, "Little Jing's birthday is coming up. I want to give her a companion beast as a gift. I want you to give me some advice." "Sis Lan, you must be joking. Your understanding of companion beasts is definitely much better than mine," Zhou Wen said. Ouyang Lan thought nothing of it as she held Zhou Wen's arm and walked into the shop. "This is a birthday gift, not equipment for killing enemies on the battlefield. It doesn't need to be practical, just good-looking. To be able to make my little Jing fall in love at first sight, you youngsters have a similar aesthetic sense. Give me some advice." Zhou Wen didn't expect the important matter Ouyang Lan mentioned to be this. However, since he was already here, it wasn't appropriate for him to turn around and leave. Furthermore, Zhou Wen wanted to see what kind of place the Xiuyuan crystal shop was. The employees seemed to know Ouyang Lan as the manager quickly came over to serve them personally. "Go ahead and busy yourselves. We'll take a look around ourselves," Ouyang Lan said with a smile. The manager and the employees tactfully retreated to the side. Only Ah Xing maintained a distance behind Ouyang Lan and Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen was somewhat puzzled. Apart from them, there wasn't a single customer in such a huge shop. Only Ah Xing maintained a distance and followed behind Ouyang Lan and Zhou Wen. As though she had seen through Zhou Wen's thoughts, Ouyang Lan said, "Although the Xiuyuan crystal shop isn't the biggest in Luoyang, it has the most exquisite items. It often has some pleasant surprises." As though she had seen through Zhou Wen's thoughts, Ouyang Lan said, "Although the Xiuyuan crystal shop isn't the biggest in Luoyang, it's the shop with the most exquisite items. It often has some surprises." Back then, the Xiuyuan crystal shop wasn't as big as it is now. Every time my father brought me here, Uncle Qin would close the shop and hang a closed sign before taking my father to see his latest collection. With that said, Zhou Wen roughly understood what Ouyang Lan meant. It wasn't that the business here wasn't good, but because of Ouyang Lan's arrival, the Xiuyuan crystal shop was temporarily closed for business. It was only open for her. However, ever since my father left Luoyang, I haven't been here in a long time. As Ouyang Lan spoke, she walked to a row of storage cabinets and skillfully entered a series of passwords. She opened one of the storage cabinets and took out a bunch of keys. Zhou Wen didn't see Ouyang Lan enter the password, but perhaps due to the influence of Truth Listener in his ear, his hearing was much stronger than before. When he heard the sound of Ouyang Lan entering the password, he knew how many digits she had entered. Chapter 109. Zhou Wen looked around and realized that there were 2 rows of lockers nearby. There were at least 40 to 50 of them. Ignoring the fact that Zhou Wen didn't know if the 10-digit number on the name card was the locker's password, even if it was the locker's password, he didn't know which locker it was. Ouyang Lan held the string of keys and said, "In the past, Uncle Qin would place the store's spare key in this locker. When my father comes, if he isn't around, he can take the key and directly enter to see the companion beasts and companion eggs. I never expected Uncle Qin to still maintain this habit after so many years. Even the password hasn't changed." Would the former principal use a fixed locker when he came in the past? Zhou Wen asked casually. Of course. The lockers here are all old-fashioned safe. They aren't the popular public lockers nowadays. As long as the password is set, apart from the person who set the password, even Uncle Qin himself can't open it. Therefore, not everyone can use the storage boxes here. Those who can use the storage boxes here are usually very familiar customers, or Uncle Qin's friends. As Ouyang Lan spoke, she walked to a locker numbered 42 and said with great nostalgia, "This locker is the one my father uses every time he comes." Zhou Wen's gaze immediately landed on the storage box as he thought to himself, could that string of numbers be the password to storage locker 42? While Zhou Wen was still pondering over it, Ouyang Lan had already extended her finger and tapped on the password lock a few times. Locker 42 was opened. Ouyang Lan had pressed a total of 6 numbers. Only then did Zhou Wen realize that the passwords here weren't all 10-digit. It was likely set by everyone according to their own habit. Locker 42 was filled with miscellaneous items, such as white gloves and masks. Ouyang Lan took out a pair of gloves and a mask and handed them to Zhou. Wear it. Although most companion eggs and companion beasts aren't afraid of being contaminated, there are some exceptions. This is also my father's habit. Zhou silently took the gloves and mask and put them on. Ouyang Lan also wore a set before leading Zhou to the elevator and down to basement 1. The top 3 floors are filled with all kinds of dimensional crystals and materials. From basement 1 to basement 4 are all kinds of companion beasts and companion eggs. Most of them are at the legendary stage. As Ouyang Lan spoke, the 2 of them had already arrived at basement 1. Zhou immediately saw many glass cages placed in the hall of basement 1. Inside were all sorts of companion beasts that he had either heard of or never heard of. These companion beasts were placed here by their owners. It's not easy to buy these companion beasts because their owners have to pay a huge price to transfer them. Therefore, the transfer fee is much higher than buying a companion egg of the same level. Ouyang Lan was very knowledgeable. She introduced the various companion beasts they could see in detail, allowing Zhou to broaden his horizons. When he arrived at the companion egg area, there were clearly more of them. Rows of companion eggs were placed inside the strengthened glass barriers. Their colors, sizes, and shapes were all different, like resplendent gems. Beside every companion egg was a sign with some information about the companion egg written on it. Some even had a portrait of the companion egg after it hatched. Little one, what do you think of this butterfly fairy companion egg? This ice moon fox doesn't seem bad either. Ouyang Lan seemed to be enjoying herself as she kept asking for Zhou opinion. As long as it's from you, I believe Jing will be very happy when she receives it, Zhou said. That's right, but I still wish to give her something that she will truly like from the bottom of her heart. You are all young people, so your aesthetic standards are quite similar. Give me more advice, Ouyang Lan said as she picked a companion egg. Zhou didn't say anything else as he thought to himself, I'm a man. My aesthetic standards are naturally different from women's. I'm afraid Jing won't like the companion egg I choose. However, Ouyang Lan kept asking for his opinion, so Zhou couldn't remain silent. After some hesitation, he asked, Sis Lan, can I take pictures of the companion eggs here? Others can't, but it's naturally not a problem for you. Feel free to take pictures. I'll take you down later. There are still epic companion beasts there. Take a few more pictures. If you encounter them in a dimensional zone in the future, you will be able to recognize them in time. Ouyang Lan even pointed out some of the more important companion eggs for Zhou to take a few more pictures. Zhou took out his mysterious phone and pretended to take pictures. He took a picture of the companion eggs and immediately saw their information and data. Zhou wasn't afraid of being captured by the surveillance cameras because he had already tried many times using modern tools like a cell phone or a camera. There was no way to capture the scene on the mysterious phone screen. All that was captured was a blurry screen. He couldn't see anything. In terms of aesthetics, Zhou really couldn't give any advice. However, with the mysterious phone's ability, he could give Ouyang Lan some suggestions on the companion egg's attribute. From the looks of it, I still feel that Butterfly Fairy and Ice Moon Fox are the most suitable for my little Jing. Little one, what do you think? Ouyang Lan finally locked onto Butterfly Fairy and Ice Moon Fox, but she was somewhat hesitant. She couldn't decide which one to choose. You can buy both of them, Zhou said. With Ouyang Lan's wealth, buying 2 legendary companion eggs was a drop in the ocean. There was no need for her to be conflicted. However, Zhou had used the mysterious phone to look at the 2 companion eggs. Their attributes were very ordinary. Ouyang Lan shook her head and said, "One gift can only show my sincerity. 2 gifts won't be beautiful. It will make little Jing feel that I'm being perfunctory." Zhou was somewhat envious of Jing. He had lost his mother when he was young, and his father wasn't someone who was good at taking care of children. Therefore, no one had ever celebrated his birthday for him, much less a birthday present. Ouyang Lan's meticulous and considerate treatment of Njing made Zhou Wen suddenly think that if his mother hadn't died from a difficult birth, she would probably love him as much as Ouyang Lan loved Njing. However, this thought was fleeting. Zhou Wen was already used to living alone. If he really had a mother like Ouyang Lan, he might not be used to it. Little one, what do you think? There's no need to be bound by my choice. If it were you, which companion egg would you want? Ouyang Lan asked again. If it were me, I would probably want that venomous caterpillar companion egg, Zhou Wen said as he pointed at a pitch-black companion egg the size of a pigeon egg. Are you serious? Ouyang Lan looked at Zhou Wen in surprise. Venomous caterpillar wasn't a powerful companion beast. Although it was at the legendary stage, venomous caterpillar's various attributes were relatively poor. The talent skill it possessed was also very useless. Chapter 110. Most importantly, the venomous caterpillar was really ugly. Furthermore, it emitted a stench when summoned. Typical girls didn't like such companion beasts. Very serious, Zhou Wen said with a nod. He had already used the mysterious phone to look at most of the companion eggs here. This venomous caterpillar was indeed the one with the best stats among the legendary companion eggs he had seen. In addition to having almost full attributes, it also had 3 rare skills, one of which was the venomous caterpillar's godly skill. Butterfly transformation. This skill allowed the vicious caterpillar to transform into a vicious butterfly, giving it a powerful flight ability. Speed, which was originally its weakness, had become its strongest point. The malevolent poison skill would also undergo some changes after the malevolent caterpillar transformed into the malevolent butterfly. In addition to touching the malevolent butterfly, touching the poisonous powder released by the malevolent butterfly would also cause one to be poisoned. This rare venomous caterpillar with 3 skills was already considered a rare item at the legendary stage. If Zhou Wen had the money, he would probably be tempted to buy it. Of course, Zhou Wen was only thinking about it. It was useless even if he really bought it. Firstly, it was difficult for him to incubate legendary companion eggs. Secondly, his mutated lotus flower ant and silver-winged flying ant were in no way inferior to the venomous caterpillar. They were even stronger. There was no need to waste time and energy on the venomous caterpillar. Even if he really bought it, it could only be used as food for companion beasts or used for fusion. Your taste is really unique. As Ouyang Lan spoke, she suddenly thought of something. She narrowed her eyes and muttered to herself, perhaps this is really a good choice. I just don't know if little Jing can recognize the venomous caterpillar companion egg. If she can't, I can tell her that this is a black jade butterfly companion egg. When she hatches, while Zhou Wen was dumbfounded, Ouyang Lan had already opened the glass cover with the key and took out the venomous caterpillar companion egg. Sheng, take the companion egg to pay the bill. When you write the receipt, write black jade butterfly. The packaging has to be exquisite. Pack it yourself, Ouyang Lan said as she called Sheng over. Sheng seemed to be accustomed to Ouyang Lan's unconstrained thoughts. He didn't look surprised as he took the companion egg and left. Little one, let's head down to take a look. There are quite a number of interesting companion beasts there. It's not easy to see them. Ouyang Lan led Zhou Wen down. After basement 3, there were special independent rooms. Each room had a companion beast. Although there was no one guarding it, there was a powerful anti-theft system. Every room needed a different key to open. He originally needed Qin Xiuan's personal accompaniment if he wanted to enter to see the companion beasts, but Ouyang Lan had Qin Xiuan's key. She could directly open the room, allowing him to broaden his horizons. Most of the companion beasts here are placed here by veterans. To them, companion beasts are both partners and comrades. They aren't willing to let companion beasts with infinite lifespans die with them. Therefore, many veterans choose to transfer their companion beasts before they die. Although it's partly due to financial needs, it's undeniable that soldiers have stronger feelings for companion beasts than ordinary people, Ouyang Lan said. Zhou had always had respect for soldiers. At the beginning of the dimensional storms, countless soldiers had used their lives to save ordinary people and explore dimensional zones. Countless soldiers had sacrificed themselves during that period. The global military had been reduced by more than a third during that period. I wonder if that fellow is still around, Ouyang Lan said as she walked forward and stopped in front of a room. After searching through the bunch of keys for a while, Ouyang Lan found a key and opened the thick metal door that resembled a vault door. Zhou looked into the room and couldn't help but be taken aback when he saw the scene inside. There was also a companion beast in this room, but it was different from the companion beasts in the other rooms. This companion beast had shackles on its body. As the companion beasts here were placed here by their owners, there was no need to worry that they would harm others, nor was there any need to worry that they would escape. The reason they were locked in the room was because they were afraid that someone would forcefully take away the companion beasts or harm the companion beasts here. It was also to prevent people with ulterior motives from tampering with them. However, the companion beast in this room had shackles on its hands and feet. Its body was also bound by chains, and behind the chains was a metal block the size of a millstone. When I was very young, Father would visit Uncle Qin every time he came here. It's been so many years, but I never expected him to still be here, Ouyang Lan said as she walked into the room and looked at the companion beast. Zhou also sized up the companion beast. He looked very human, but his muscles were extremely thin. He was all skin and bones, and his ribs could be clearly counted. However, his body was dry but not withered. His skin emitted a silver metallic luster, and on the skin of his upper body, there were many strange silver tattoos. His silver-white long hair hung down, covering his face and a portion of his body. It was impossible to see what he looked like as he sat there cross-legged. It was even difficult to tell his gender. Sislan, what companion beast is this? Zhou had seen some humanoid companion beasts in textbooks, but they still had characteristics that didn't match humans. However, the companion beast in front of him didn't have any obvious characteristics that were different from humans. I don't know. I asked Father when I was young, but he didn't answer me, nor did he tell me anything about this companion beast. However, every time he came to Uncle Qin's place, he would come here to visit him. Ouyang Lan was clearly very interested in this companion beast. She sighed and continued, I later asked Uncle Qin, but he said that he didn't know what companion beast it was. It was brought by my father and left with him. My father didn't tell him anything about this companion beast. Zhou was somewhat curious as well. As he sized up the companion beast, he suddenly saw that there was a 9-checkered number box engraved on the metal block that locked the companion beast. It looked very similar to the key of a password lock. Don't tell me the string of numbers the former principal sent me is used on this? Zhou had a thought. However, on second thought, he felt that something was amiss. The former principal had a daughter and granddaughter, and Qin Xiuan was his best friend. There was no need for him to send the password to Zhou. Chapter 111. What Zhou didn't understand the most was why the former principal would send him such a name card. Or perhaps it wasn't from the former principal at all. However, if it wasn't from the former principal, who could it be? Zhou had 10,000 questions in his mind that he couldn't get an answer to. He wanted to see if the number on the name card could open the chains on the companion beast, but he didn't dare do so because he didn't know what the consequences would be. It would be fine if he couldn't open it, but if he did, Zhou couldn't predict what would happen. Just as Zhou was pondering over it, he suddenly felt his hair stand on end. Cold sweat broke out on his back as though he had been targeted by a ferocious ghost. Zhou Wen's gaze focused as he looked at the chained companion beast. As the silver-white hair covered his face, he couldn't see his eyes or face. However, Zhou Wen had a nagging feeling that there was a pair of eyes staring at him from behind the waterfall-like silver hair. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but Zhou Wen felt that the face behind the silver hair was smiling strangely at him. "It's about time. Let's get something to eat first. Then, it's time to get Ah Sheng to send you back. We can't delay your studies." Ouyang Lan led Zhou Wen out of the room and locked the door again. Standing outside the door, Zhou Wen watched as the metal door gradually closed, slowly concealing the companion beast's figure. However, Zhou Wen still felt that he was staring at him and smiling. Zhou Wen originally wanted to return to school, but Ouyang Lan didn't allow him to say anything. She took him to have a meal before getting Ah Sheng to send him back to school. During the meal, Zhou Wen asked about the former principal. Ouyang Lan told him quite a bit, giving Zhou Wen a new understanding of the former principal, who always chuckled. In the past, Zhou Wen only felt that the former principal was amiable and took good care of him, but he didn't really manage anything. Back when he was principal of Guide High School, he didn't really manage anything. It was always the vice principals who managed things. He just planted flowers and nurtured grass every day. He was very free. However, from Ouyang Lan, Zhou Wen learned that the former principal was a very famous historian. He had also experienced the era of the dimensional storms. The previous generation of the Yin family and the old principal were sworn brothers. Later on, the two families even got married. However, Ouyang Lan's previous husband was unlucky and died too early. Although he had learned quite a bit about the former principal, it wasn't of much help to Zhou Wen. The only information that helped him was that Ouyang Lan had told him that the former principal had indeed been invited to a dimensional zone in Zhuolu. Because the magnetic field interference there was too strong, electronic communication was almost useless. Ouyang Lan had not received any news from the old headmaster for a long time. This kind of thing happened often in the past. Although Ouyang Lan was worried, there was nothing she could do. After returning to his dorm, Zhou Wen saw the antelope sleeping on the sofa. It hadn't left, much to his disappointment. Lying on the bed, he took out his phone and continued to grind dungeons. Just like before, he would first go and kill the small bosses in the dungeons before going to the Fire God platform to die. When he arrived at Tiger Cage Pass, Zhou Wen saw a word-engraved demonized general appear. He was immediately delighted. When he zoomed in, he realized that it was a paper demonized general. Although the paper demonized general was powerful, Zhou Wen had the astral/blade aura that countered it. Soon, he killed the paper demonized general and with a ding, a dimensional crystal dropped. Primordial Energy Skill Crystal. Zhou Wen was delighted when he saw the crystal's name. He eagerly picked up the Primordial Energy Skill Crystal, and the blood-colored avatar successfully absorbed it. Absorbed Paper Demonized General Crystal. Attained Astral Suction Palm. Zhou Wen had long yearned to obtain the Paper Demonized General's Primordial Energy Skill. Now that his wish had been fulfilled, he couldn't help but give it a try. He extended his hand at a tiger cage past demonized soldier and sucked. The demonized soldier's body was immediately sucked into the blood-colored avatar's palm. No matter how it struggled, it couldn't escape. The blood-colored avatar's other palm brandished astral/blade aura and beheaded the demonized soldier. What a godly skill! Zhou Wen placed more importance on the astral suction palm than the astral/blade. Although the astral/blade aura was powerful, it was only an offensive technique. Even without the astral/blade aura, Zhou Wen still had other offensive means. However, the only primordial energy skill that could force an enemy to change their trajectory was the astral suction palm. After studying it for a while, Zhou Wen gained a general understanding of the astral suction palm. Like the astral/blade, It wasn't a primordial energy skill that expended a fixed amount of primordial energy. The further the enemy was, the heavier they were, and the more primordial energy Palm expended. With Zhou Wen's present primordial energy, he could only absorb a demonized soldier from a distance of about 2 meters. It was difficult for him to absorb a legendary creature like the demonized general. However, just because he couldn't absorb it didn't mean it was useless. Although he couldn't directly absorb it, the suction force would still affect the demonized general to a certain extent, causing its actions to deviate. Experts only fought for an instant. Such a deviation was enough to be fatal. The more Zhou Wen studied it, the more satisfied he became with the astral suction palm. In the future, when he advanced to the legendary stage and his primordial energy limit increased, the might of the astral suction cloth would also increase. It was a primordial energy skill that was always useful. Among the 3 types of word-engraved demonized general, only the fist demonized general hasn't been killed. I wonder if the astral suction palm can restrain the fist demonized general's skill. Zhou Wen wasn't sure. Now, Zhou Wen had the 2 powerful legendary companion beasts, the silver-winged flying ant and the mutated lotus flower ant, but he still failed to defeat the fist demonized general. It wasn't that the fist demonized general was much stronger than the paper and blade demonized generals, but its skill was just too sick. When it was used, it was like an invincible body. The mutated lotus flower ant and silver-winged flying ant's primordial energy skills couldn't injure it, much less kill it. Now, Zhou Wen could only place his hopes on the astral suction palm. Since the astral slash blade could restrain the astral suction palm, it was possible that the astral suction palm could restrain the fist demonized general's skill. However, to encounter the fist demonized general required luck. Zhou Wen constantly grinded dungeons before heading to the Fire God platform to read the ancient Sovereign Sutra. The days passed one after another. Zhou Wen, I'm ready. Follow me to Lotus Flower Cave again. Wang Lu, who he hadn't seen in days, shouted for Zhou Wen from the neighboring yard. Today was the last day of her homework mission. Zhou Wen naturally had no reason to reject her after taking her money. All he could do was accompany her to Lotus Flower Cave again. This is my last chance. I have to break Huang Ji's record today. Wang Lu was filled with confidence. Zhou Wen didn't comment as he followed behind Wang Lu with the camera. After the 2 entered Lotus Flower Cave, they searched for the fairy monkey in the cave. Chapter 112. It was a boy about the same age as Zhou Wen. He held a purple narrow saber in his hand and his figure flickered like a ghost. After a few exchanges with the fairy monkey, he slew it. The entire process took less than 20 seconds. It was so clean that it was terrifying. Zhou Wen sized up the boy in surprise. His speed was even faster than the fairy monkey's. This was very rare among students. Furthermore, his saber techniques were faster than his movement technique. The fairy monkey's speed and movement techniques were top-notch among legendaries, but it couldn't even dodge a single strike. Such a fast saber was truly terrifying. The boy wiped the blood off his saber and looked at Zhou Wen and Wang Lu. Soon, his gaze locked onto Zhou Wen. Are you the Zhou Wen who killed the word-engraved demonized general? The boy asked as he stared at Zhou Wen. I'm Zhou Wen. Who are you? Zhou Wen asked. What a pity, the boy said without rhyme or reason before turning to leave with the saber in hand. Zhou Wen found it somewhat baffling, but he couldn't be bothered to think too much about it. He carried the camera and prepared to continue walking forward. By the side, Wang Lu looked in the direction of the boy's departure and said, I never expected Feng Chuyen to come to Sunset College. Why haven't I seen him among the special admissions students? Do you still want to break the record? Zhou Wen asked. The boy had clearly broken Huang Ji's previous record. Furthermore, he had broken the record much earlier. It was likely within 20 seconds. Although Wang Lu was powerful, it was clearly impossible for her to kill the fairy monkey within 20 seconds. What record? With that fellow around, no one can be faster than him. Wang Lu paused for a moment before explaining, that fellow's name is Feng Chuyan. In a place like Luoyang, you might not have heard of his name, but where I am, his reputation is similar to Luoyang's in Jing. They are both known as invincible elite. Legend has it that his legendary life providence is Swift Saber Heavenly King. At the same level, no one can be faster than his saber. You saw it just now. Even the fairy monkey couldn't dodge his saber. From this you can tell how fast his saber is. It's impossible to compete with such a person for the record of speed, Wang Lu said with a bitter smile. Swift Saber Heavenly King? Is this a life providence that augments the saber? Zhou asked curiously. Probably. Life providence is everyone's secret. Typically, they wouldn't tell others easily. I only know that his life providence is called Swift Saber Heavenly King. It greatly augments sabers. After a pause, Wang Lu continued, You know that there's an organization that specializes in evaluating life providence? The Feng family members have an elder who works there. He has life providence family. He has Feng as he can. One is, Wu is. Zhou had also heard of that organization, but it was only a civilian organization. It wasn't created by the League's officials, so the evaluation was very limited. Indeed, it can't be said for sure. This is because when they test the quality of a life providence, the first standard is how much it increases one's combat strength. Therefore, life providences that are more combat-oriented typically have higher scores. However, in fact, many life providences might not increase one's combat strength by much, but they are very useful. Heaven life, li then, life. That monkey up with is as. I wonder what my life providence will be in the future? Typically, a life providence is related to one's physique and the primordial energy art they cultivate. My physique isn't bad, and the primordial energy art I cultivate isn't weak either. It shouldn't be difficult for me to obtain a powerful life providence. I just don't know what kind of life providence it will be. It's best if it's a combat-type life providence. Zhou was somewhat looking forward to his life providence. However, the advancement of the Lost Immortal Sutra was much more difficult than ordinary primordial energy arts. Even the primordial energy arts on the stone slabs in the mysterious lands weren't as difficult to cultivate as the Lost Immortal Sutra. With Feng Chuyan around, there's no hope of breaking the record. I can only blame it on my bad luck. Wang Lu was somewhat depressed. Although she didn't really care about the record, anyone would feel depressed to have a bucket of cold water poured on them just as they were about to succeed after preparing for so long. It's actually not difficult to break his record, Zhou said after some thought. You have a solution? Wang Lu's eyes lit up as she asked Zhou. She didn't doubt his words at all. I do have a solution, but it's not within my scope of work, Zhou said. Speak. What are your conditions? Wang Lu saw through Zhou's thoughts at a glance as she curled her lips. Money. I'll help you break the record. How much can you pay? Zhou didn't have any materialistic desires, so he didn't spend much money. However, if he wanted to invest in Huang Ji's game, he would need a huge sum of money. Zhou didn't have the time or channels to earn money. All he could do was start small and earn as much as he could. A rich person like Wang Lu could even pay 150,000 yuan for a cameraman. Helping her break the record shouldn't be less than 150,000 yuan. Wang Lu sized up Zhou and asked, Are you that short of money? I'm indeed short of money. Zhou nodded. What do you plan on doing with the money? How much money are you short of? Wang Lu asked again. I don't know how much money I'm short of. A senior from my school made a cell phone game. I want to invest in him. I don't know how much money I need, but it should be a lot. Zhou didn't hide the game. He wanted to invest in Huang Ji's game because he wanted others to know that there was such a game. The more people who knew, the better. You really are a gaming fan. In this day and age, there aren't many people like you who are addicted to games. Wang Lu thought for a moment and continued, however, making a game can be big or small. The amount of money spent can be huge or small. If you just want to make a simple game, 1 to 200,000 is enough. I can give it to you directly. If the game you want to make is relatively big, even if I give you 1 to 200,000, it'll just be a drop in the bucket. Why don't you first make a project proposal for me? If I think it's alright, I might be able to invest in you. We'll talk about the investment in the future. I'll give you the money to help you break the record first, Zhou Wen said as he extended his hand. Wang Lu slapped Zhou Wen's hand away. You can have the money, but you have to help me break the record first. How do I know if you can really help me break the record? Zhou Wen didn't say anything else as he searched for a fairy monkey in the lotus flower cave with Wang Lu. To break the record, he had to find one first. Chapter 113. Wang Lu actually doubted if Zhou Wen could help her break the record. Although Zhou Wen had a pair of legendary wings and his movement techniques were extremely powerful, he definitely wouldn't be able to dodge Feng Qiuyan's saber with that kind of movement technique and speed. The saber's speed brought about by the swift saber Heavenly King Life Providence made Feng Qiuyan's strike speed far exceed people of the same level. Furthermore, Zhou Wen hadn't advanced to the legendary stage and was one level lower than Feng Qiuyan. Even Wang Lu wasn't confident of being faster than someone with the swift saber Heavenly King Life Providence. How are you going to help me? Although this homework mission allows for a 4-person team to complete, I don't plan on joining forces with others. If that's the case, it'll be meaningless even if I beat Feng Qiuyan, Wang Lu said to Zhou Wen as she walked. When we meet a fairy monkey later, I'll demonstrate it. As long as you remember my steps, it won't be a problem for you to kill a fairy monkey in 20 seconds with your strength. Zhou Wen had been in charge of filming Wang Lu's battle the last time, so he had a certain understanding of her strength. Therefore, he dared to say that he could help her break the record. You want to demonstrate? Wang Lu sized up Zhou Wen and said. There's no other way. You only have one chance left. I'm afraid you won't be able to grasp the gist of it with just words. Zhou Wen was speaking the truth. The method he used to kill the fairy monkey was the experience he had gained from killing them countless times. Every step was calculated to the extreme without any mistake. Only then could he compress the time to the minimum. If Zhou Wen were to take action himself, it wouldn't be a problem even if something went wrong. However, Wang Lu didn't have much experience fighting fairy monkeys. Even if she had watched the school's information and videos, it was just an armchair strategist. In fact, even the school's information wasn't as reasonable and practical as Zhou Wen's design. After all, there were too few fairy monkeys. No one had the chance to kill so many fairy monkeys, so it was naturally impossible to have a deep understanding of them. After passing through several caves, they finally found another fairy monkey. Just as Zhou Wen was about to rush forward, Wang Lu suddenly thought of something and said anxiously, By the way, after Lotus Flower Cave is sealed by the school, students aren't allowed to kill fairy monkeys without permission. Our class received the homework mission, and each person can only kill 2. You aren't a student of our class and didn't receive the homework mission. You can't kill fairy monkeys. I know. That's why I didn't plan on killing it. Zhou Wen didn't stop as he charged towards the fairy monkey. This time, it was Wang Lu's turn to be the cameraman. She aimed the camera at Zhou Wen, hoping to see how he could kill the fairy monkey faster than Feng Qiuyan. Wang Lu still had some worries. The essence energy skills Zhou Wen knew couldn't be identical to hers. If Zhou Wen used some special essence energy skill and she didn't have a similar essence energy skill, it would be difficult for her to use Zhou Wen's method even if it was faster than Feng Qiuyan's. However, Wang Lu soon realized that her worries were unnecessary. This was because Zhou didn't use any primordial energy skills or companion beasts. He charged at the fairy monkey purely with his body. If it were anyone else, Wang Lu would definitely think that they were courting death. However, Wang Lu knew Zhou strength and character rather well. It was impossible for him to do something so foolish. She adjusted the camera to ensure that she could record Zhou every move. As for Wang Lu, her gaze never left Zhou. The fairy monkey bared its teeth as it charged down. Its pair of wings made its body abnormally agile, as though it was a ferocious bird swooping down from the sky. Its claws swiped at Zhou head with a sharp claw beam. The fairy monkey's speed was much faster than Zhou, but Zhou seemed to have expected it. As he slightly turned his body to dodge the claw beam, he approached the fairy monkey's left side. The fairy monkey flapped its wings and its body twisted in midair. Its claws once again stabbed at Zhou heart with a sharp claw beam. This time, the fairy monkey was even closer to Zhou, and its claw beam was faster and sharper. However, Zhou body moved slightly to the side, dodging the fairy monkey's attack in a seemingly impossible manner. Wang Lu saw clearly from the side that Zhou didn't use any primordial energy skills. He didn't even use a movement technique. With his speed at an absolute disadvantage, he dodged all the fairy monkey's sharp attacks as though he was taking a leisurely stroll. Zhou gave Wang Lu an extremely odd feeling. It was as though he was the stronger party and not the legendary fairy monkey. Zhou every move was composed, but there was a sense of foresight. It was as though he had the fairy monkey in the palm of his hand. It sounded very slow, but in fact, it happened very quickly. In just 10 seconds, Zhou figure cleverly moved behind the fairy monkey. With a karate chop, he easily slashed at the back of the fairy monkey's skull. But it didn't seem like he used much strength, but the fairy monkey seemed to be electrocuted. It fell from the sky and fell to the ground, convulsing without being able to immediately get up. Wang Lu's eyes widened. A fellow at the mortal stage had managed to knock out a legendary fairy monkey with his strength and speed without the help of a primordial energy skill or companion beast. More importantly, only a little more than 10 seconds had passed. It wasn't even 11 seconds. Wang Lu was afraid that no classmates would believe her even if she told them. "How did you do it?" Wang Lu stared at Zhou and asked when she saw him walk back. "Watch more and study more. You can do the same." Zhou pointed at the fairy monkey who was still in a daze and said, "It was only temporarily knocked unconscious by me. It will wake up very soon. Let's leave this place first. Find a place and watch my demonstration video a few more times. Remember my positioning and timing. It shouldn't be difficult to reduce the time to within 20 seconds. Also, you have to accurately strike the spot I just attacked and kill it in one strike. Otherwise, it will be a waste of time." Wang Lu and Zhou came to an empty cave and carefully watched Zhou's video. "How did you figure out such positioning and the fairy monkey's weakness?" The more Wang Lu watched, the more incredulous she became. Even the strategies in the school weren't as simple, incisive, and effective as Zhou's method. "I carefully watched the video I recorded for you that day and studied it for a long time before I reached this result. It's not expensive to sell it to you for 150,000, right?" Zhou said. "It's not expensive." Wang Lu nodded with certainty. Such experience wasn't something that could be measured with money. On a real battlefield, such experience could save one's life. Wang Lu practiced according to Zhou's positioning for more than half an hour before mastering the crux of it. Her martial arts talent was so high that she lived up to her name as a specially recruited student. Then, Wang Lu found the fairy monkey and killed it according to Zhou's method. The process was rather easy. Although her positioning was a little shaky, she still achieved a good result of 17 seconds. She was probably faster than Feng Chuyan. Although she had broken the record, Wang Lu wasn't happy. Others might not know, but she knew very well that Zhou had an even more ridiculous result. It was just that this result wouldn't appear in the school's records. Chapter 114. In an office, Qiao Siyuan stood respectfully in front of his desk with his head lowered in humility. Have you found what I asked you to find? A man sat behind the desk. As only the desk lamp on the desk was on, it was impossible to see the man's appearance in the dark. All one could see was a blurry figure. Sir, apart from the infamily, I've searched everywhere, but I didn't find what you mentioned, Qiao Siyuan answered cautiously with his head lowered. Why didn't you go to the infamily? The man asked indifferently. We've already sent people to infiltrate the infamily, but Ouyang Lan has managed the infamily's affairs airtight. The people we infiltrated didn't even have the chance to approach Ouyang Lan's residence. All they did was do chores in the compound. After a pause, Qiao Siyuan continued, previously, in the name of investigating Jing Daoxian, I had also used Liz to test the infamily's attitude. And Tianzuo's attitude was very unyielding. He ignored the senator's reputation and crippled Liz's primordial energy. It probably won't be easy to directly enter the infamily to find the item. If everything was easy, why would I need you guys? The man said coldly. Sir, you're right. I'll think of another solution. Qiao Siyuan bowed slightly and continued, Sir, I believe that perhaps Professor Ouyang didn't leave the item at the infamily. Why do you say that? The man sat behind the light and lit a cigarette with an ancient lighter. According to my investigations, although Professor Ouyang is best friends with the infamily's patriarch, he didn't agree to Ouyang Lan marrying into the infamily. Back then, because of this matter, Professor Ouyang and Ouyang Lan nearly fell out. Ever since then, Professor Ouyang hasn't entered the infamily again. He wasn't even present when Tianzuo and Jing were born. Seeing the man not react, Qiao Siyuan continued, it was only after the infamily's patriarch died that the relationship between Professor Ouyang and Ouyang Lan eased up significantly. However, he only went to the infamily a few times and never stayed there for more than an hour. He didn't even stay overnight. With Professor Ouyang's relationship with the infamily, I believe he wouldn't leave such an important item at the infamily. Then, where do you think Ouyang would hide the item? The man flicked the cigarette ash and asked. Sir, do you think Professor Ouyang would have brought it with him? Qiao Siyuan probed. Impossible. That thing can't enter dimensional zones, or there will be huge trouble. Ouyang often needs to enter dimensional zones. He isn't that stupid. He must have hidden it somewhere. The man paused and said, no matter what, we must find that thing at all costs. We can't let go of the infamily. Maybe their bad relationship is just an illusion created by Ouyang. Yes, Your Excellency. Qiao Siyuan bowed. We don't have much time. We need to get it back as soon as possible. Those ignorant fellows outside thought that they had a lot of time to waste, but they didn't know that disaster was already hanging on their necks like a sharp blade, and could fall at any time. Once the dimensional zone's restrictions are removed, it will be the end of the human world. Therefore, we have to grasp that thing in our hands to prevent such a thing from happening, the man said. Your Excellency, is that thing really that important? Qiao Siyuan asked the question on his mind. Back then, it wasn't only the 6 heroes who entered the Holy Land. In fact, there were many people who entered the Holy Land. However, most of them died inside. No one knows their names. However, apart from the 6 heroes, there were others who came out of the Holy Land alive and brought something out. Jing Daoxian is one of them. Ouyang is also one of them. I saw him bring the item out of the Holy Land. That item is of great importance. We have to grasp it, the man said. Your Excellency, there's something that I find somewhat coincidental, but I'm not sure if there's anything wrong with it, Qiao Siyuan said after some thought. Speak, the man said. Jing Daoxian was seriously injured. While we were pursuing him, he once stayed in Guide City for nearly 10 minutes, Qiao Siyuan said. You've already written about this in your report. It has something to do with that youth named Zhou, right? The man asked. Yes, I later carefully investigated Zhou. Apart from being Zhou Lingfeng's son, he also has a good relationship with Professor Ouyang. Back when Professor Ouyang was Guide City's principal, he often invited Zhou to his house for a meal. This is a treatment that other students and even teachers don't receive. Now, Ouyang Lan is married to Zhou Lingfeng. I find it too much of a coincidence. I'm wondering if it's possible that Professor Ouyang handed the item to Zhou or Zhou Lingfeng, Qiao Xiyuan said. Impossible. The power of that item isn't something a mortal stage can withstand. It's impossible even if he possesses it. You can continue investigating Zhou Wen's matter, but focus on the Yin family. The only ones who have the ability to control that item are in Tianzhua and Ouyang Lan, the man said. Yes, I understand. Feng Qiuyan wasn't in a good mood. He originally believed that he would definitely get first place in the homework test, but he never expected Wang Lu to be faster than him by nearly a second. As expected of Wang Lu, she already has such abilities even before advancing to the legendary stage. After Feng Qiuyan saw the recording of Wang Lu's homework mission, he felt that his loss wasn't undeserved. Wang Lu's understanding and grasp of positioning had already reached an extremely high level. This was something he lacked. After Wang Lu advances to the legendary stage, I'll definitely fight her. Before that, I still need to hone myself better and make myself stronger and faster. Feng Qiuyan quickly walked to the school's equipment training room. Feng Qiuyan believed that he had to be focused in everything he did. Therefore, he had always been practicing his saber technique. He wanted to make his saber techniques faster and stronger, so that he could reach the pinnacle of the world with his saber. Therefore, after arriving at the equipment training room, Feng Qiuyan walked straight to the training ground where the ball launcher was. It was the most suitable equipment for him to practice his swift saber. However, when Feng Qiuyan arrived at the venue, he realized that someone had already occupied the venue for practice. He couldn't help but frown slightly. On careful look, he realized that he knew the person who occupied the venue. It was the freshman who had killed the word-engraved demonized general, Zhou Wen. There was only one ball launcher, so Feng Qiuyan didn't wish to waste time waiting. Therefore, after some thought, he walked straight into the venue. At the same time, he took a rubber practice knife from the rack and walked towards Zhou Wen. Chapter 115. Zhou Wen felt that it was a little too eye-catching for him to stay in his dorm gaming and constantly become stronger. Therefore, he planned on coming out to exercise. At the very least, he wanted others to know that he was working hard at his cultivation. After circling the training grounds, Zhou Wen originally wanted to choose a simple strength training machine to train his legs so that he could free his hands to continue gaming. However, to his surprise, the training grounds were filled to the brim. After searching for a while, Zhou Wen found an empty training ground. In the past, Zhou Wen had never come into contact with a ball ejection machine. Only when he saw the demonstration on the screen beside him did he know what kind of machine it was. The ball ejection machine was similar to the serving machine used for baseball practice. It was a machine that spewed out balls, and the trainee would hit the balls that were spewed out. However, the ball ejection machine could shoot out balls in a wide range. Furthermore, it could shoot out multiple balls at once. This was somewhat different from a baseball training machine. There were many training weapons placed on the rack. Sabers, swords, rods, guns, whips, etc. They were all made of rubber. Zhou Wen casually picked up a short rod and switched on the ball ejection machine. He couldn't be bothered to see how to adjust the difficulty of the ball ejection machine, so he pressed the start button. A ball shot out from the pipe of the ball ejection machine and flew over like a cannonball. Zhou Wen took note of the distance and swung the short rod, easily sending the ball flying. Soon, Zhou Wen realized that the ball ejection machine was rather simple. He could swing the bat with one hand while gaming on his phone with the other. It doesn't seem bad to train like this. As Zhou gamed, he didn't need to use his eyes to look at the ball. The hearing that Truth Listener had given him allowed him to accurately hit the ball with his hearing. Furthermore, Zhou realized that practicing Truth Listener's ability was very helpful to his hearing. There were all sorts of dimensional spaces. Many of them had a huge impact on one's vision. Sometimes, one needed to fight without vision. Zhou originally only wanted to move around casually, but after practicing for a while, he felt that such training was very beneficial. At this moment, Feng Qiuyan arrived at the training grounds. Feng Qiuyan walked into the training grounds with a practice saber in hand. He couldn't help but frown when he saw Zhou gaming while playing. Looking at the trajectory and speed of the eyeball, he knew that this was the lowest level of difficulty. Not to mention a student of Sunset College, even an ordinary high school student who had cultivated before would be able to hit a flying ball. From Feng Qiuyan's point of view, Zhou's practice was an insult to the word practice. Therefore, Feng Qiuyan decided to kick Zhou out. Instead of letting Zhou waste the school's resources, he might as well let him train a little longer. Of course, Feng Qiuyan disdained chasing him away, nor did he wish to nag at Zhou like a woman. Feng Qiuyan had his own way of doing things like a man. With the practice saber in hand, he walked close to Zhou. Feng Qiuyan stood there silently without any movement as his eyes stared at the exit of the ball ejection machine. Feng Qiuyan's idea was very simple. It was just like playing basketball. As long as he snatched all the rebounds and prevented Zhou from touching the ball, Zhou would naturally find it boring and leave. Feng Qiuyan was confident that he could snatch all of Zhou's balls, preventing him from touching a single one. Bang! With a sonic boom, a ball was spewed out and flew towards Zhou at high speed. Now's the time. Feng Qiuyan's heart stirred as he swung the wooden saber in his hand. He was confident that as long as he swung his saber, Zhou would be out of the picture. His speed wasn't something an ordinary student could match. Even if Zhou stood in front and attacked first, Feng Qiuyan was confident that he would be the first to strike. However, when Feng Qiuyan raised the practice saber in his hand and was about to swing it, his hand stopped. In the end, he failed to complete the swing. He watched helplessly as Zhou used the practice bat in his hand to send the ball flying. Is it a coincidence? Feng Qiuyan frowned at Zhou and saw that his back was still facing him. He was still holding a bat in one hand and gaming on his phone in the other. However, at the instant Feng Qiuyan was about to attack, he felt that Zhou was standing in a perfect spot, blocking all his attack trajectories, preventing him from having a chance to slash at the ball. Just like rebounding in basketball, Zhou stood at the spot where the basketball would land. Even if others could jump higher than him, it would be difficult for them to snatch the ball due to the wrong position. The spot where Zhou was standing gave Feng Qiuyan such a feeling, preventing him from having a chance to strike. It should just be a coincidence, Feng Qiuyan thought as he stared at the outlet again. The ball ejection machine had a total of 36 outlets. They were divided into 6 rows, occupying a length and height of 20 meters. Each outlet could move its position and direction within a small range. The balls that were shot out would also have different trajectories. As it was set to the lowest difficulty, only one ball would be shot out at a time. However, the location and direction of the shot were uncertain. Feng Qiuyan perked up and prepared to find where the ball would land before Zhou did. He wanted Zhou to have a taste of not being able to hit the ball. Bam! Another ball shot out. Feng Qiuyan saw the direction and location of the ball and was about to rush over, but just as he raised his feet, he saw that Zhou had already walked over. If he were to move now, he would already be half a beat too late. Even if he rushed over, he would have lost the best position. Just like before, it was impossible for him to beat Zhou. If you want to play, I'll seriously play with you. Feng Qiuyan imagined that Zhou was competing with him. Furthermore, Zhou Wen's attitude of playing the game while shooting the ball clearly showed that he didn't think much of him. This left Feng Qiuyan somewhat annoyed. However, Zhou Wen didn't think too much about it. He heard that someone was beside him, but he didn't know that it was Feng Qiuyan. He didn't know that Feng Qiuyan wanted to chase him away. He imagined that the training ground allowed many people to practice together, so he didn't take it to heart. All he did was hit the ball with his hearing and feelings. Feng Qiuyan's addition was also a form of practice for Zhou Wen. He was still grinding the ant nest dungeon on his phone. Typically, in public or with others, Zhou Wen would only grind this dungeon. Another ball shot out. This time, Feng Qiuyan was fully focused, but just as he was about to take a step forward, he realized that Zhou Wen was one step ahead of him. He happened to reach the best landing spot ahead of him. Bam! The ball was sent flying by Zhou Wen again. Feng Qiuyan didn't even touch the ball after 3 consecutive balls. He didn't even swing his saber once. Chapter 116. In the beginning, Feng Qiuyan had deliberately suppressed his speed and tried his best to maintain his speed at the mortal stage to compete with Zhou Wen. However, with the passage of time and the repeated failures in snatching the ball, Feng Qiuyan unconsciously increased his speed and competed with Zhou Wen at the legendary stage. However, this left Feng Qiuyan more and more alarmed. His legendary speed was still inferior to Zhou Wen's. Even though his speed was much faster than Zhou Wen's, the training ground was only 20 meters wide. Zhou Wen stood in the middle and was only 10 meters away from him. With such a short distance, his speed advantage couldn't be fully displayed. This wasn't the main reason. Although his speed advantage in short distances wasn't too obvious, an advantage was an advantage. Under normal circumstances, he would definitely be able to occupy an advantageous position first. Even if he couldn't occupy an advantageous position with his speed, he could still hit the ball before Zhou Wen. However, Zhou Wen seemed to be able to predict the future. Every time the ball was spat out, Zhou Wen would already begin moving. By the time Feng Qiuyan saw the ball, it would be too late. It was useless to be faster. This left Feng Qiuyan extremely aggrieved. What was even more unacceptable to Feng Qiuyan was that Zhou Wen had been gaming with his other hand when he was snatching the ball from him. In the beginning, Feng Qiuyan thought that Zhou Wen was deliberately insulting him, but in fact, he didn't really put his mind on the game. However, Feng Qiuyan later realized that Zhou Wen was really gaming. His gaze didn't even leave the game screen. It was as though snatching the ball from him was a casual act. This fellow, so strong. Feng Qiuyan's forehead broke out in sweat as he stared at Zhou Wen's back. The contempt he had previously had completely vanished. Zhou Wen's back seemed to become much taller and more majestic in his eyes, like a city wall that would never be conquered. Zhou Wen didn't pay any attention to Feng Qiuyan. He was immersed in his new discovery. The truth listener earring gave him powerful hearing. When the ball was spinning in the machine, Zhou Wen could already hear it clearly. Therefore, he could know which outlet would spit out the ball ahead of Feng Qiuyan. He could also know the ball's trajectory and landing point ahead of time. However, this wasn't the discovery that surprised Zhou Wen. What really surprised him was his train of thought. Zhou Wen was an especially focused person. In the past, no matter what he did, he would be able to focus and not be disturbed by anything. Therefore, he would sometimes appear in a daze. It was as though he didn't react to anything others said. In fact, it wasn't because he was stupid, but because he was so focused that he didn't hear what others were saying to him. Now, Zhou Wen realized that he could still focus when doing things, but while focusing, he seemed to be able to handle other things at the same time. This feeling was hard to describe. If an analogy had to be made, Zhou Wen's mind could be compared to a computer processor. In the past, Zhou Wen's brain was a single-core processor, but now it was dual-core, allowing him to process more programs at the same time. Of course, this was only a metaphor and not accurate. However, Zhou could indeed hit all the balls while gaming. There didn't seem to be any mental interference between the two. At the same time, Zhou acutely realized that the Lost Immortal Sutra would circulate especially quickly when he was gaming and basketball. It was more than twice as fast as usual. From the looks of it, this should be the effects of the Lost Immortal Sutra. Zhou increasingly felt that the Lost Immortal Sutra's origins were extraordinary. However, he couldn't figure out why Jing Daoxian would give him such a powerful primordial energy art for nothing. It didn't make sense to explain that he was pleasing to the eye. Zhou didn't know the origins of the Lost Immortal Sutra, so he naturally didn't know how terrifying it was. If it wasn't for his talent in focusing his psyche, he would have long been killed by the Lost Immortal Sutra. Even if he didn't die, he would have gone mad. Even now, when Zhou slept at night, he would still hear the murmurs echoing in his ears all night. If it were any ordinary person, it would be difficult for them to tolerate such harassment. Even if they didn't go mad, their temper would become especially irritable. However, Zhou didn't. Zhou was immersed in his new discovery, and the thrill of practicing using his hearing to fight, but Feng Qiuyan's expression turned uglier. He had already used all his strength, but he still couldn't beat Zhou. Although he had a chance of defeating Zhou by summoning a companion beast, Feng Qiuyan's pride prevented him from doing so. He still relied on his physical strength to compete with Zhou. When Zhou felt that he had enough practice today, he stopped to rest and was about to return when he turned to glance at Feng Qiuyan. He couldn't help but be slightly taken aback. He recognized Feng Qiuyan, but Feng Qiuyan's current appearance was very different from before. Now, Feng Qiuyan was covered in sweat and constantly panting. His eyes were red like a rabbit's eyes as he looked at Zhou, as though he would devour him at any moment. It nearly gave Zhou a fright. Feng Qiuyan wasn't really tired, but he was under too much psychological pressure. With his legendary physique, he had actually lost to a mortal stage. Furthermore, he had lost so miserably. With Zhou still using one hand to game, he hadn't managed to snatch a single ball. The psychological pressure was unimaginable to outsiders. If it wasn't for Feng Qiuyan's determination, anyone with a weaker will might have long had their confidence collapse. The more Feng Qiuyan wanted to win, the more psychological pressure he felt. His mental exhaustion far exceeded his physical exhaustion. How did you do it? Just as Zhou imagined that Feng Qiuyan would pounce on him and bite him, Feng Qiuyan stared at him and suddenly asked, "What do you mean, how did I do it?" Zhou was slightly taken aback. "How are you able to predict where the ball is going to land without looking at it?" Feng Qiuyan asked the question in his heart. He was better than Zhou in every aspect, but this was the only thing he lost to. Because of this, Zhou pointed at his ear before picking up his coat on the chair and turning to leave. Zhou was referring to the truth listener earring on his ear, but Feng Qiuyan clearly misunderstood him. He thought that Zhou was referring to his ear and instantly came to a realization. He muttered to himself, "So that's how it is. So he's not really gaming, but he's using the game to divert his attention and only uses his ears to listen to the ball. So that's how he trains." From the looks of it, the outside world says that he's a gaming otaku, but that's not the case. He works harder than anyone else. Gaming is also a form of cultivation. Clearly, Feng Qiuyan had misunderstood Zhou. In fact, gaming was Zhou's main goal. Practicing his listening was just in passing. Zhou, wait. Seeing that Zhou had already walked out of the training ground, Feng Qiuyan suddenly chased after him as though he had just woken up from a dream. Chapter 117. Seeing Feng Qiuyan chase after him, Zhou stopped and turned to ask him, "Student, what's the matter?" Feng Qiuyan stared at Zhou and enunciated each word clearly. "I want to hire you as my personal coach. I'll tailor a training plan for you." "You want me to be your personal coach?" Zhou pointed at his nose and asked in surprise. He didn't believe that he had the talent to tailor a training plan. His plan was only to game, and game. Please don't reject it. If you have any conditions, feel free to raise them. Money isn't a problem. Feng Qiuyan was very sincere. Zhou had already opened his mouth to reject, but when he heard the words, money isn't a problem, he swallowed the words that were just at the tip of his tongue. Are you sure you want me to be your personal coach and help you tailor a training plan? I'm just a mortal stage student. Zhou looked at Feng Qiuyan and confirmed again. Level isn't a problem. I just want to know your training methods. If you find it troublesome, there's no need to deliberately make arrangements. You just need me to train with you. I'll do whatever you do, Feng Qiuyan said very seriously. Feng Qiuyan had clearly misunderstood Zhou. He believed that Zhou, who could come up with a listening training method, was definitely good at tailoring a targeted training plan. Therefore, he wanted to hire Zhou as his personal coach. He wanted to know how Zhou trained to such a level. Perhaps it would be of help to his cultivation and allow him to break through his recent bottleneck. I'm very expensive. Zhou didn't think too much about it. Since there was a chance to earn money that came knocking on his door, there was no reason not to take it. I'll pay you according to the most expensive personal coach class fees on the market. You can pay it monthly or by class. If you have any other requests, you can tell me now, Feng Qiuyan said. Let's pay it by class. I'll pay it once per class. Zhou thought for a moment and realized that he didn't have much to teach. He decided to give it a try by teaching a class. If it really didn't work, he couldn't keep scamming people of their money. All right. Feng Qiuyan agreed readily and directly transferred a lesson fee to Zhou. Then, he eagerly asked, Coach, what training are we going to do for the first lesson? Zhou thought for a moment and said, You practice saber arts, right? Yes, what I practice is the ultimate swift saber. I pursue the ultimate speed. Feng Qiuyan looked at Zhou with anticipation, hoping that Zhou could customize some special training methods for him to make a breakthrough. Zhou fell into deep thought when he heard that. After some thought, he suddenly realized that he didn't know any saber techniques, nor had he practiced them. The only relationship he had with the saber was astral/saber. However, astral/blade was a saber aura-type primordial energy skill. There were no moves to speak of. He just needed to clash head-on without any cultivation. After some thought, Zhou failed to figure out how to tailor a cultivation plan for Feng Qiuyan. Suddenly, an idea flashed in his mind as he recalled the word-engraved demonized general at Tiger Cage Pass. There were 3 types of word-engraved demonized generals. The blade demonized general's astral/blade was fast and ruthless, but it could only counter the paper demonized general. It was useless against the fist demonized general. Although the swift saber was strong, there were ways to counter the swift saber. Since I don't know saber arts, I'll let Feng Qiuyan practice the saber in the opposite direction. When Feng Qiuyan feels that something is amiss, he probably won't come looking for me again. Zhou didn't wish to scam him again when he saw how readily Feng Qiuyan paid. Feng Qiuyan, have you heard of the principle that extreme yang produces yin? Zhou asked Feng Qiuyan. Are you saying that extreme yang produces the opposite? Feng Qiuyan said after some thought. It's about the same. There's an ancient saying that great wisdom may appear foolish, and great skill may appear clumsy. When something is done to the extreme, it might produce the opposite effect. You practice the swift saber, so if there comes a day when you strike out slowly, your saber arts might be able to improve further. Zhou had only said that in passing because he wanted to deal with Feng Qiuyan this time so that he wouldn't come looking for him again. Then how do I train to reach the realm of the slow saber? Feng Qiuyan took Zhou's words seriously and asked very seriously. There are some things that you need to figure out yourself. No matter how well others explain it, it's still someone else's insight. Only something that you understand and figure out yourself is yours. The direction has already been pointed out to you. As for what to do, you need to figure it out yourself. Although Zhou Wen was fooling Feng Qiuyan, what he said was really some of his own understanding and insight. It wasn't pure nonsense. After sending Feng Qiuyan away with great difficulty, Zhou Wen jogged back to his dorm and lay comfortably in bed before taking out his mysterious phone. Perhaps it was his luck, although Zhou Wen didn't obtain the rank 9 Dragon Gate fairy skill when he was grinding Lotus Flower Cave. He obtained a fairy monkey companion egg. Flying Beast. Legendary Life Providence. Pet of Void Strength, 15 Speed, 18 Constitution, 15 Primordial Energy, 14 Talent Skill. Dragon Gate Fairy Skill Companion Form. Wings. The fairy monkey's stats were clearly inferior to the silver-winged flying ant, so Zhou Wen directly fed the companion egg to Truth Listener as food. In the past, Truth Listener didn't have any reaction after eating a companion egg, but this time, a system notification appeared after it swallowed the companion egg. Truth Listener has reached the evolution requirement. Beginning evolution. Zhou Wen saw Truth Listener's true body appear on the phone screen. It was a beast that looked like a golden monkey. At that moment, Truth Listener's entire body was glowing with a resplendent golden light like a golden Buddha statue. It was so dazzling that one couldn't open their eyes. Soon, the entire screen was filled with golden light. After feeding it for so long, it's finally about to evolve. Zhou Wen was delighted. Truth Listener at the mortal stage wasn't of much use, but it would be different after advancing to the legendary stage. It would definitely be of great use. After a while, the golden light on the screen gradually converged before completely disappearing, revealing Truth Listener's true appearance. At the same time, a system notification popped up on the phone screen. Truth Listener's evolution complete. However, Zhou Wen looked at Truth Listener's appearance. It didn't seem to have changed much. It was still tiny, only slightly bigger than a finger. It was covered in golden fur and its eyes shimmered with golden light. That's not right. There's still something different. Zhou Wen realized that Truth Listener was indeed somewhat different. It was originally the same as an ordinary golden monkey, with only one pair of ears. But now it had an additional pair of ears, turning it into 4 ears. However, its ears were very small. Each ear was neatly arranged on both sides of its head. It didn't look ugly at all. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't notice that it had 4 ears. Chapter 118. Truth Listener. Legendary, Evolvable, Life Providence. Omniscient Senses Strength. 21 Speed. 21 Constitution. 21 Primordial Energy. 21 Talent Skill. Truth Listener, Indestructible Golden Body, Evil Warding, 9 Extremes Companion Form. Earring. In the past, Zhou Wen only knew that the upper limit of stats at the legendary stage was 18. Later, when he had the mutated Lotus Flower Ant and Silver-Winged Flying Ant, he realized that 18 wasn't the limit. However, he had never seen one with 21 points. Mythical creatures are indeed extraordinary. Even if they haven't evolved to the mythical stage, their stats aren't something ordinary companion beasts can compare with. However, I wonder what use this omniscient senses life providence has. Zhou Wen carefully read Truth Listener's information and saw that the annotation for the words omniscient senses life providence was replace eyes with ears, spy on the world. Summoning Truth Listener, it was still tiny and exquisite. Its entire body glowed with a resplendent golden light, as though it was a golden monkey sculpture carved out of gold. From its appearance, one couldn't tell how powerful it was. The mutated skeleton ant, which was also at the legendary stage, looked many times stronger than it. Making Truth Listener transform into an earring and land on his ear, Zhou Wen closed his eyes to feel it. Immediately, he felt that the Truth Listener earring augmented his hearing. It was many times stronger than before. Although he had his eyes closed, everything around him appeared like a 3-dimensional image in his mind. It was as though Zhou Wen could still see everything around him. The only difference was that the world he could see with his eyes was colored, but the three-dimensional image in his mind was black and white. Zhou Wen knew that he wasn't really seeing anything. This was the listening ability of the truth listener earring. Zhou Wen originally believed that no matter how good his hearing was, it was impossible for him to hear a motionless object. But now, he knew that his previous thoughts were wrong. No object existed independently. Although the object itself was motionless, the movement of other objects would similarly affect them. As long as one's hearing was strong enough, they could use their ears to replace their eyes to see a motionless object. The flow of air and the transmission of sound would produce feedback when they touched a stationary object. Ordinary people couldn't hear such feedback, but the truth listener earring allowed Zhou Wen to hear it clearly. Furthermore, it constructed a three-dimensional image in Zhou Wen's mind, allowing him to see it with his own eyes. It was even more than what he could see when he opened his eyes. Within 20 meters, even if there were obstacles in the way, Zhou Wen could still see everything behind the wall with his ears. It was as though he had X-ray vision. Apart from being unable to see color, everything else was no different from normal vision. With this strange hearing, Zhou Wen could clearly hear the interior of the buildings on both sides. The soundproofing devices in the buildings were completely useless against him. Wang Lu wasn't in the building. On the other side, Jing happened to be in a bedroom near Zhou Wen's building. Zhou Wen didn't have any desire to peep. Just as he was about to retract his hearing, he heard Jing say, "Zhou Wen still hasn't cultivated the sun's strafe art. Could it be that the damage I dealt to him when I defeated him was really that great? Did I really go too far?" Zhou Wen was slightly taken aback. If he hadn't seen clearly that the person who spoke was Jing, he would have thought that he had heard wrongly. The impression Jing gave him had always been one of arrogance and indifference, as though she was high and mighty and despised everything. It was hard to imagine such words coming from Jing's mouth. Zhou Wen couldn't help but feel curious. He wanted to hear what else Jing had to say, so he didn't put away the truth listener earring and continued listening to the commotion next door. Jing, who usually looked arrogant and cold, was sitting on the bed with a teddy doll in her arms. She seemed to be talking to the teddy bear. "I didn't really want to hurt him. I just wanted to prove myself. I just wanted to let grandfather know that Mom's choice back then was right. Her child is the most outstanding, even more outstanding than the genius grandfather spoke of. I know that Zhou Wen is innocent and this matter has nothing to do with him, but apart from defeating him, I have no other way to prove to grandfather that I'm better than him. I really didn't mean to hurt him. Little bear, what do you think I should do to make him pull himself together?" Jing paused for a moment before adding, "It's not that I care about him. It's just that if he can't pull himself together and advance to the legendary stage, it's meaningless even if I defeat him. I still can't prove to grandfather that I'm better than him. That's why I have to help him rebuild his confidence and advance to the legendary realm. When he's at his peak, I'll defeat him. That way, Grandpa will know that his daughter's child is the best, and that my mother's decision to marry my father was the right one." When Zhou Wen heard that, he stopped listening and put away the truth listener earring. He finally knew why Jing was targeting him. It wasn't because of Zhou Lingfeng and Ouyang Lan's union, nor was it purely because of the special physique spot. However, Zhou Wen didn't care why Jing was going against him. He only hoped that Jing wouldn't disturb him in the future. Everyone minded their own business. That was the ideal state that Zhou Wen pursued. Now, all Zhou Wen wanted to do was game in peace. The fewer things he had to do, the better. As usual, he first killed all the mini-bosses in the dungeon before heading to the Fire God platform to memorize the ancient Sovereign Sutra. Just as he was grinding for the second time, the doorbell rang. Zhou Wen opened the door and saw that it was Li Xian, whom he hadn't seen in days. Li Xian's face was filled with glee. The moment he entered, he patted Zhou Wen on the shoulder and said, "Kid, I'll protect you in school in the future. If anyone dares to bully you, just say my name." "Are you having a fever?" Zhou Wen slapped Li Xian's hand away and sat down on the sofa. He poured himself a cup of blood-replenishing tea and slowly drank it. Li Xian smugly sat down beside Zhou Wen and hugged his shoulder. Suppressing the excitement in his heart, he deliberately whispered, "Old Zhou, just yesterday, I finally advanced to the legendary stage. Guess what my legendary life providence is?" "I'm not guessing. I'm not interested," Zhou Wen said as he drank the blood-replenishing tea. However, Li Xian continued excitedly, "I don't think you can guess it. I might as well tell you. My legendary life providence is Immortal God of Combat. Isn't it awesome? Just from the name, you can tell that it's an awesome life providence. It's not that I'm bragging, but this life providence is practically invincible. It's an undying body, a supreme overlord body. For example, Yang Lai, I'll just stand there without retaliating and allow him to beat me. Even if he dies of exhaustion, he won't be able to shake my stalwart figure." When Li Xian reached a point in his excitement, he stood up and jumped onto the sofa, assuming a posture of looking down on the world. His eyes were filled with disdain, as though he was looking down on all the heroes of the world. However, just as he said that, he was kicked down by the antelope that was sleeping on the sofa. The antelope had already treated the sofa as its bed. Li Xian had actually dared to jump on its bed with shoes on, so how could the antelope be nice to him? Bam! Li Xian was kicked to the ground by the antelope's hoof. His sternum caved in, forming a hoof shape as he fell to the ground, blood spewing out of his mouth. Isn't it an antelope?" Li Xian lay on the ground as he looked at the lazy antelope in disbelief. Chapter 119. Li Xian had always believed that the antelope was a mutated animal from the lower half of Mount Laojun, but the strength of its hoof made him realize that not only was the antelope a dimensional creature, but it was also a very high-level dimensional creature. His Immortal God of Combat life providence greatly augmented his constitution. It was a little exaggerated to say that he had an undying and indestructible overlord body, but it wasn't easy for ordinary legendary creatures to injure him. A casual hoof from the antelope had severely injured him. This had already exceeded the limits of a legendary stage's strength. It was most likely a terrifying existence at the epic stage. "I'll take you to the hospital." Zhou Wen was also given a fright. Although the antelope refused to leave and even dined on him, it hadn't harmed him. Now that it had seriously injured Li Xian, who had just advanced to the legendary stage, with a single hoof, Zhou Wen confirmed his previous guess that the antelope indeed possessed terrifying strength. "There's no need. Such a small injury is nothing to me. The Immortal God of Combat life providence isn't for nothing." Li Xian shook his head and struggled to stand up by pressing the coffee table. In the beginning, Li Xian seemed to be enduring immense pain. Even breathing seemed to be in pain, and his face was terrifyingly pale. However, after taking a few deep breaths, Li Xian's expression gradually improved. The injury on his chest also seemed to gradually recover. The Immortal God of Combat life providence has powerful self-recovery abilities. As long as I'm not dead, my injuries can slowly recover. Li Xian didn't forget to brag about his life providence. "Your Virgin God of Combat life providence sure is useful." Zhou Wen was somewhat surprised. Such a life providence was truly powerful. It was practically a life-saving technique. "What Virgin God of Combat?" "It's the Immortal God of Combat." Cough, cough. Li Xian was so agitated that he aggravated his internal injuries and coughed out quite a bit of blood. "From the looks of it, your self-recovery ability won't recover that quickly. I'll take you to the hospital first." Zhou Wen helped Li Xian out. Li Xian originally wanted to say that there was no need, but when he saw the antelope staring at him from the sofa, he immediately jolted and shrunk his neck out of Zhou Wen's dorm. What's with that antelope? Isn't it a mutated animal from Mount Laojun? Li Xian asked in a low voice after Zhou Wen helped him out of the building. I'm not too sure either. It has always been following me and has never hurt anyone. Today is the first time, Zhou Wen said truthfully. Forget it. Count me unlucky. There's no need to go to the hospital. Let's find a place to rest. I still have something to tell you. Li Xian was depressed. Are you really fine? Zhou Wen sized up Li Xian and asked. It's just a flesh wound. It didn't injure any internal organs. Even if you don't go to the hospital, you'll recover in a few days. It'll be troublesome if you go to the hospital. However, you have to be careful in the future. Don't accidentally get kicked to death by that sheep, Li Xian said. The two of them sat down on a bench in the green space. Li Xian's expression was much better and had almost returned to normal. From the looks of it, he wasn't bragging previously. The immortal god of combat life providence was indeed powerful. It's not bad to have a life preservation life providence like Li Xian, Zhou Wen thought. The school's first comprehensive test is almost here. How are your preparations? Li Xian sat on the bench and panted a few times before asking. Prepare for what? Zhou Wen knew about the monthly comprehensive test, but he didn't know why he had to prepare for it. Li Xian rolled his eyes at Zhou Wen speechlessly. You didn't see the contents of the comprehensive test, right? No, it hasn't been announced yet, right? Zhou Wen shook his head slightly. Li Xian lampooned. You really don't care about what's going on outside. All you want to do is game. The content of the first comprehensive test every year is the same. There are a total of 4 tests. Fishing a coin from a frying pan, crossing a paper bridge, lifting a stone cauldron, and swallowing mountains and rivers. Out of these 4 events, you have to pass at least 2 of them. If you fail in 3 of them, you will be expelled. Why do these names sound like acrobatic performances from the past? Zhou Wen said with a smile. The names are vulgar and the tests are indeed very vulgar, but it's really not easy. These tests are real, not a smokescreen used by entertainers. Fishing coins from a pot of oil is really a pot of boiling oil. To fish out the coins from inside, it's definitely impossible to rely on one's body. One's hand will be crippled from the explosion. You need a primordial energy skill in your hand or a protective primordial energy skill to fish out the coins. Crossing a paper bridge is the easiest of the 4 tests to fail. It's a 100-meter-long paper bridge, and the bridge's surface is made of thin xian paper. If you step on it, you will fail if the paper is torn. Without a sufficiently good primordial energy skill, there's no way to cross it. Lifting a stone cauldron is the easiest. As long as you have enough strength, you can use some primordial energy skills that enhance your strength to pass. Swallowing mountains and rivers isn't difficult either. As long as your primordial energy reaches 9, you can basically pass. This is a basic requirement in Sunset College. These 2 shouldn't be a problem for you. It's just that you need to make preparations to fish for money from a pot of oil and cross a paper bridge. If you don't have those types of primordial energy skills, I can lend you a few primordial energy skill crystals, Li Xian said. There's no need. I have a way to pass. Zhou Wen had the lotus flower Buddha body primordial energy skill, so fishing for coins from a pot of oil shouldn't be a problem. As for crossing the paper bridge, he also had the Dragon Gate Fairy skill, so it shouldn't be difficult. However, Zhou Wen didn't plan on completing all the tests. After all, he only needed to complete 2 tests to pass. There was no need for him to participate in all 4. However, Li Xian said, don't think nothing of it. If you can squeeze into the top 10 of the comprehensive test, you will receive a chance to enter Providence Palace. That's a good place that can't be found other than Sunset College. Providence Palace? Zhou Wen was somewhat surprised. Zhou Wen had heard of this name before. Providence Palace was actually the imperial palace of the Sui and Tang dynasties. Back then, Luoyang was the capital and center of the country, and Providence Palace was the political center of Luoyang. Later, Providence Palace was buried in the dust of history and destroyed by war. However, after the dimensional storms, the ruins of Providence Palace formed a dimensional zone. Zhou had heard many rumors about the Providence Palace dimensional zone. It was a rather special dimensional zone. There wasn't much danger inside, but it was possible to obtain great opportunities. In the past, when he was in high school, there was a rumor that a particular student had obtained a particular treasure in Providence Palace and soared to the sky, advancing to the legendary stage or even the epic stage. Of course, those were only legends. The Providence Palace dimensional zone had always been controlled by Sunset College and had never been opened to the public. Even among Sunset College's students, only a few had the right to enter. Zhou really didn't know what benefits there were inside. Chapter 120. I've already asked around. There aren't many developed areas in Providence Palace. If we enter, we can only walk to Intian Gate. We can't even enter the city gates. In fact, it can't be considered entering Providence Palace, Li Xian said. If we can't even enter the door, what can we do there? Zhou asked, puzzled. Don't be anxious. Listen to me slowly. Li Xian deliberately acted mysterious and kept him in suspense before continuing. Usually, the doors to Providence Palace are tightly shut. Even top epic experts can't enter, much less us. Thus, until now, no one knows what is inside the school of the Emperor Star. However, on a certain day every year, the gates of the school of the Emperor Star open wide. Many strange things come from all directions, as if they are being carried by invisible ghosts. They line up and fly into the school of the Emperor Star. I heard that there's everything inside. There are rare antiques, weapons, armor, gems, and jade. In any case, there are countless treasures. However, to us, those are basically useless. What can really be considered treasures are the companion eggs and dimensional crystals inside. Legend has it that a senior once obtained a companion egg. It turned out to be an epic angel. You definitely know about companion beasts like angels. They are dimensional creatures that only exist in the West District dimensional space. Logically speaking, it's impossible for us to have angel companion eggs here, Li Xian said mysteriously. For real? Zhou found it unbelievable when he saw Li Xian's words turning more and more mysterious. Why would I lie to you? Someone from our Li family has entered before, but they didn't choose anything good, Li Xian said. According to what you said, since Providence Palace has so many good things, why don't they get more people to move them in? Why only the top 10 of the comprehensive test can enter? Zhou still found it unbelievable. What Li Xian said didn't make sense at all. Do you think those things can be chosen by anyone? Back when Providence Palace's dimensional zone was first discovered, 10 tokens were found outside Providence Palace. On that day, only the person with the token had the right to choose one of those items and bring it back. People without tokens can't touch anything inside. Even with a token, they can only choose one item. It's useless to take anything else, Li Xian said in all seriousness. Although what Li Xian said was bizarre, Zhou knew that there was no need for him to lie. Instead, he was curious about the Emperor Star School. Li Xian said with a smile, "It's useless to think too much about it now. If you want to choose something from Providence Palace, you have to be in the top 10 of the comprehensive test. Otherwise, it's useless to say anything else. Sunset College is filled with experts. Even if I advance to the legendary stage, I'm not confident that I can squeeze into the top 10. Old Zhou, you haven't even advanced to the legendary stage, so it'll be even more difficult for you to enter the top 10. Ignoring the rest, Huang Ji, Hui Haifeng, Wang Lu, Feng Chiyan, and that cheap sister of yours will definitely enter the top 10. They will occupy 5 spots, and the remaining 5 spots will be contested by many powerful fellows. If I was given another 1 or 2 years, I would definitely be able to enter the top 10. As for now, it's really a bit difficult. Zhou didn't know many students at Sunset College, but he actually knew all of the people Li Xian mentioned. It's fine if it's the others, but Wang Lu hasn't advanced to the legendary stage, right? How do you know that she will definitely occupy a spot? Zhou looked at Li Xian in puzzlement. Do you really not know, or are you faking it? The Wang family's Wang Lu cultivates in the youth rejuvenation divine art. If she can't occupy a spot, who else can? Li Xian said. Zhou was puzzled. Seeing that he really didn't know, Li Xian explained in detail to Zhou. The youth rejuvenation divine art was a secret primordial energy art of the Wang family. Outsiders didn't know much about it. After cultivating this primordial energy art, it would produce the effect of rejuvenation after the first breakthrough. The rejuvenation mentioned here didn't really mean becoming a child, but that one's level would drop back to the mortal stage. At the same time, one's physique and talent would be greatly improved. Cultivating again would not only allow one to advance quickly, but their achievements would also be higher. Wang Lu was about the same age as Jing when she first advanced to the legendary stage, but after advancing, she was reduced to the mortal stage by the rejuvenation effect. She needed to cultivate again and advance to the legendary stage again. However, after Wang Lu advanced to the epic stage, there would be another rejuvenation effect. She would still fall back to the mortal stage, and she would need to cultivate again. Wang Lu must have taken a liking to the Providence Palace's opportunity to study at Sunset College. She will definitely be able to advance back to the legendary stage before the comprehensive test, Li Xian said with certainty. I see. Only then did Zhou realize that Wang Lu had such a story. Anyway, I've told you the news. Think about it yourself. Call me if you need anything. Li Xian rubbed his chest and got up to leave. Although his immortal god of combat life providence and invincible connate divine art could quickly recover, his pain wouldn't be reduced at all. After Li Xian left, Zhou kept thinking about the comprehensive test. If it was just to vie for a spot, Zhou definitely wouldn't want to vie for it. However, the items in Providence Palace were quite attractive to him. Even if the other students competed for it, they would at most be able to choose once. However, Zhou was thinking that if he could download Providence Palace into his phone, would he be able to choose a few more times? To verify this idea, he had to first download Providence Palace. However, if he didn't get into the top 10, he wouldn't have the chance to go to Providence Palace. Naturally, he wouldn't have the chance to download the dungeon. From the looks of it, I still have to vie for this spot. Zhou made up his mind to vie for it, but he wasn't confident if he could obtain it. The 4 tests tested the student's speed, strength, constitution, and primordial energy. Zhou's 4 attributes were stronger than anyone at the same level, but compared to the legendary stage, he was much weaker. Thankfully, the comprehensive test allows the use of companion beasts. When the time comes, I won't have no chance at all. After Zhou returned to his room, he began grinding crazily. Zhou's luck seemed pretty good over the past few days. While grinding the lotus flower cave, another fairy monkey companion egg dropped. Furthermore, its attributes were rather excellent grade. Zhou couldn't bear to use it as food. Finally, he steeled his heart and fused the fairy monkey companion egg with the stone qilin companion egg. If he could obtain an excellent grade companion egg with 2 skills, Zhou planned on taking the risk to incubate it. However, with a compatibility of 65% out of 100, the fusion failed. With a bang, the 2 companion eggs vanished. Although Zhou was already mentally prepared for failure, he was still somewhat depressed when he saw the 2 companion eggs vanish together. Gambling is indeed wrong. Zhou sighed and continued grinding. Chapter 121. Overseer, there's news from the League that a dimensional creature from the sea has infiltrated the East District. It might be heading for us, Ah Xing said as he held a document that had just been faxed over. What level of dimensional creature is it? Entienzwa asked with a frown. I'm not too sure at the moment, but from the description on the document, it wasn't easy for it to break through the coastal defense line. It even suffered some injuries. It should be an ordinary epic, Xing said as he read the document. However, ever since it charged through the coastal defense line, the League hasn't been able to track it down. They can only occasionally find some traces left behind by it. From the direction it's moving in, it's very likely to pass through Luoyang. The League has requested us to cooperate and intercept it. Overseer, what do you think? Strengthen the defense line and distribute the newly researched essence gold bullet. Even if we can't kill it here, we can't let it do whatever it wants in Luoyang, Entienzwa said. Yes, Overseer. Xing accepted the order and left. With the help of the legendary Truth Listener earring, Zhou felt like a fish in water. A few days later, he finally memorized all the contents of the Ancient Sovereign Sutra. The instant he finished memorizing the Ancient Sovereign Sutra, he felt as though all the cells in his body had been ignited. His entire body became extremely hot, as though it was about to combust. The firebirds that were charging at the blood-colored avatar retreated and returned to the cauldron in front of the stone monument. Just as Zhou thought that his body was about to explode, the Lost Immortal Sutra finally took effect, causing his body to enter a state of absolute stillness. In the next second, his essence energy circulated again, but it was no longer the Lost Immortal Sutra's route. Instead, it became the Ancient Sovereign Sutra that Zhou had just memorized. The Ancient Sovereign Sutra could be described with one word: domineering. Wherever the essence energy flowed, Zhou felt as though all his cells had turned into explosives that could erupt with unparalleled power at any moment. The scorching, powerful, and tyrannical power was something that none of the essence energy arts that Zhou had cultivated in the past possessed. However, this domineering power gave Zhou a feeling of vitality instead of destruction. When the Ancient Sovereign Sutra completed a heavenly cycle, Zhou felt a strange change in his body. It was as though a casual punch could shatter the world. Taking a look at the blood-colored avatar's stats, he realized that his strength had changed from 10 to 11. Now, he had 3 stats at 11, leaving only speed at 10. As he had mastered the Ancient Sovereign Sutra, the blood-colored avatar stood very close to the top of the Fire God platform, but no firebird appeared to attack him. Zhou controlled the blood-colored avatar to walk onto the Fire God platform. The flames in the stone furnace flickered, but it didn't spew out any firebirds to attack him. He originally imagined that there would be companion eggs given to him at the Fire God platform, but the outcome disappointed him. There was only a stone monument and a stone furnace on the Fire God platform. Apart from that, there was nothing else. No one gave him a companion egg. So not every place has a mythical companion egg. Zhou wasn't disappointed as he carefully sized up the stone monument and the stone furnace. Zhou had already memorized the words on the stone furnace. Furthermore, he had gained a basic mastery of the Ancient Sovereign Sutra, so there was nothing special about it. Instead, the stone furnace was rather strange. Zhou couldn't help but take a closer look. There were many firebird patterns engraved on the outer walls of the stone furnace. However, on a closer look, he realized that they weren't firebirds, but different forms of flames. The stone furnace burned with scarlet flames, and in the flames there was something. Zhou looked at it for a while before he saw that it was a stone saber. It was constantly being burned in the furnace's flames. As the flames were too intense, he could only see a blurry outline of the stone saber. Could the stone saber in the furnace be a companion egg? Zhou's heart stirred as he made the blood-colored avatar attempt to reach out to retrieve the saber. After all, the blood-colored avatar only wasted a drop of blood every time it died. Zhou wasn't stingy with such attempts. After circulating the Ancient Sovereign Sutra to its limits, the blood-colored avatar's palm reached into the stone furnace. The flames in the stone furnace automatically parted as though it was welcoming him. The flames parted, revealing the stone saber in the middle of the stone furnace. It allowed Zhou to see it clearly, and it was no longer a blurry outline. The first impression the stone saber gave Zhou was that it was crude. It was a stone saber that was polished from black stone. There were many edges and bumps on the blade, making it completely different from exquisite. However, the stone saber gave Zhou an extremely domineering feeling, as though it was the only one in the world. An ancient and desolate aura inundated him. On the side of the stone saber, there was a blood-stained mark. The blood-red color matched its shape, making it look like a blood-colored bolt of lightning. Without any hesitation, Zhou controlled the blood-colored avatar to grab the saber's hilt, hoping to pull it out of the stone furnace. However, when the blood-colored avatar's palm touched the stone saber, Zhou was stunned. This was because the blood-colored avatar's palm seemed to pass through an illusion, failing to touch the stone saber. How can this be? Zhou tried a few more times, but the outcome was the same. The stone saber didn't seem to be a real existence, just an illusion. No matter how the blood-colored avatar tried to grab it, it was futile. Its palm passed through the stone saber again and again. Zhou studied it on Fire God platform for a long time, but he couldn't figure out what was going on. Could it be that the stone saber is really just an illusion? Zhou stared at the stone saber in-game. No matter how he looked at it, it didn't seem like an illusion. This was because the saber's aura was just too powerful. How could an illusion have such a powerful aura? Now, Zhou had the urge to immediately return to Guide Ancient City and ascend Fire God platform in reality to see if there was a stone saber in the stone furnace. It was impossible for Zhou to return to Guide Ancient City now, so he could only temporarily give up on the stone saber and leave the Ancient Sovereign City dungeon. All three stats have already reached 11 points. Where can I find a primordial energy art to raise my speed to 11 points? Zhou only wanted to advance to the legendary stage as soon as possible. At the mortal stage, he was still too weak. Compared to true experts, he could only allow himself to be trampled upon. Furthermore, only by advancing to the legendary stage could he hatch legendary companion eggs without any worries. Armor, weapons, necklaces, and other companion beasts were very helpful in raising his strength. After some consideration, Zhou went to the school's library. He wanted to read the information and see if there were any other mysterious dimensional zones in Luoyang that had primordial energy arts. Unfortunately, Zhou didn't find anything similar to Small Buddha Temple or Mount Laojun despite reading through a lot of information. At the very least, there didn't seem to be such a place in Luoyang. Zhou flipped through the other dimensional zones in the league and made quite a few discoveries. Boom! As Zhou was reading the information, he suddenly heard a loud bang. The entire library shook violently as large amounts of concrete fell from above him. Chapter 122. Zhou immediately activated his lotus flower Buddha body. At the same time, he spread out the silver wings on his back and instantly retreated more than 10 meters. His left hand, which was wrapped in the lotus bracer, shattered the large piece of reinforced concrete that smashed at him. Boom! Amidst the flying debris and dust, Zhou saw a gigantic green-scaled snake fall from the hole in the roof. It smashed the bookshelves in the library to smithereens, sending wood and paper flying everywhere. A huge crater was left in the ground. Large amounts of debris smashed into Zhou, but thankfully, he had already activated his lotus flower Buddha body. The flying debris didn't cause any damage to his body. The green-scaled snake was extremely large. It was more than 100 meters long and as thick as a water tank. On its back was a pair of gigantic wing-like fins. The students in the library dodged as they screamed and ran out of the library. Although Zhou didn't know what was happening, he knew that he couldn't stay here for long. Just as he was about to escape to the library like the other students, He saw the gigantic snake open its mouth in a bid to devour a student beside it. The student was too close to the spot where the snake had landed. His calf was penetrated by a flying piece of metal as his body was pinned to the ground. He was momentarily unable to escape, nor could he escape. Zhouwen took a look and realized that the student was Feng Ruoshi. With a thought, the silver-winged flying ant immediately separated from his body and transformed into a silver stream of light. Before the snake could devour Feng Ruoshi, it pulled her out. The silver-winged flying ant carried the injured Feng Ruoshi with its claws and flew back to Zhouwen's side. The enraged snake raised its neck and opened its mouth to pounce over. Zhouwen was already planning on escaping when he suddenly heard a series of gunshots. He saw a large number of soldiers jump down from the hole. They held submachine guns in their hands as they fired at the snake ferociously. Typical firearms, much less bullets, even nuclear bombs would have limited damage to dimensional creatures. It might even stimulate the dimensional creatures to mutate. However, when the soldiers' bullets hit the snake's body, they pierced through its scales, leaving bloody holes in its body. The snake screamed in pain as it twisted its body in a bid to escape. However, it was too late to escape now. The soldiers fired at it, and in just a few seconds, the ferocious giant snake was turned into a hornet's nest. The snake's blood was everywhere. A young officer rushed over and sized him up as he asked anxiously, "Young Master One, are you all right?" "I'm fine." Zhouwen recognized the officer. It was Tianzua's adjutant, Sheng. "It's good that you're fine. Young Master One, you can head back first. There are still some things that need to be dealt with here." Sheng called 2 soldiers over and got them to escort Zhouwen and Feng Ruoshi out of the library. Feng Ruoshi's calf was injured, and the steel centipede was still lodged in it. Thankfully, the injury wasn't serious. Just as the 2 of them left the library, the school's medical team rushed over. A doctor treated Feng Ruoshi. "Thank you, Zhouwen. You risked your life to save me after what I did to you in the past." She had always been brooding over the fact that she hadn't been able to team up with Zhouwen for the college entrance exam. "It's nothing. It's not considered a risk. If it were any other student, I would have saved them too. You don't have to think too much about it," Zhouwen said as he turned to leave. The middle-aged female doctor who was treating Feng Ruoshi's wound nearly laughed out loud when she heard Zhouwen say that. Seeing Feng Ruoshi's disappointed expression, she said to her, "Young lady, it's fine if you don't want such a man who relies on his strength to stay single. It'll save you from being angered to death by him in the future." Feng Ruoshi blushed. "We're just ordinary classmates. Don't think too much about it." What happened in the library caused quite a commotion in the academy. The students were all discussing this matter. The school quickly gave an official explanation. It was said that a criminal had escaped with a companion beast and mistakenly entered the school under the pursuit of the military. The criminal and the companion beast had been killed on the spot by the military. Zhouwen had seen the giant snake with his own eyes, but he felt that it didn't look like a companion beast with an owner. It was more like a wild dimensional creature. Zhouwen originally felt that it was impossible. After all, it was impossible for wild dimensional creatures to leave dimensional zones. However, when he thought of the antelope in his dorm, Zhouwen felt that it wasn't impossible. If all dimensional creatures can rush out of dimensional zones, what will the human world become? Zhouwen couldn't help but shiver when he thought of this possibility. The number of human experts had been constantly increasing in the past few decades. Epic experts were no longer rare, but compared to dimensional creatures, they were still far inferior. Ignoring everything else, just the 3-faced Buddha of Small Buddha Temple and the expert who hadn't even shown his face at Mount Laojun were probably difficult to find a match among humans. There were many other places like this on Earth. If there really comes a day when dimensional creatures rush out of dimensional zones, it will probably be the end of the world for humans. I have to have sufficient strength to survive. Zhouwen felt that that day wasn't unreachable. The appearance of the antelope and the giant snake intensified his sense of danger. I still need more power. Zhouwen was even more eager to raise his strength. At the very least, he needed the capital to survive the disaster. After returning to his dorm, Zhouwen planned on taking a shower and changing his clothes that were covered in dust and torn. Then, he would take a shower before continuing gaming. However, when he took off his clothes, he realized that there was an egg-sized conch shell stuck to the inside of his clothes. The conch shell was colorful and beautiful. Zhouwen casually plucked it off and was about to throw it away, but when he held it in his hand, he was slightly taken aback. The conch shell was filled with blue seawater. Even though the opening of the conch shell was facing downwards, the seawater inside didn't stir at all. Not even a drop of seawater flowed out. Zhouwen was somewhat surprised when he suddenly saw waves in the seawater. Ripples spread out as something slowly floated up in the middle of the seawater. Zhouwen was alarmed as he quickly threw away the conch shell. At the same time, he summoned his companion beast to fuse with him and prepared for battle. The conch shell that Zhouwen had thrown away floated in midair. Amidst the rippling seawater, a petite and beautiful figure emerged. It was a creature with a human body and a fishtail. She looked like a legendary mermaid. She had a head of golden curly hair, but her ears looked like fins. Her eyes were blue like the sea, and she seemed to have an indescribable charm. Chapter 123. Without much hesitation, the transparent silver wings on Zhouwen's back flapped the moment he saw the siren-like mermaid appear. He stomped on the ground and wanted to rush out from the balcony. There were too many unknown, terrifying existences in this world. Regardless of the possibility of defeating the siren, Zhouwen wasn't willing to take the risk. However, just as he moved, the conch on the siren's back spewed out a large amount of seawater. The egg-sized conch spewed out seawater that enveloped the entire living room like a waterfall. Zhouwen's body slammed into the waterfall formed by the seawater and immediately felt his body being pushed back into the living room by the wave. Hee, foolish human. In front of the Sea Queen, any resistance is unnecessary. Become my slave and be used by me. This is the only way for you to survive. The siren's figure gradually walked out of the conch as its body gradually grew larger. Soon, it became about the size of a normal human. Zhouwen gathered his strength and repeatedly slammed into the waterfall formed by the seawater. He was repelled every time. Even when astral blades slashed at the waterfall, it only left a crack before vanishing in the blink of an eye. It's useless. Foolish human, don't do such foolish things again. Become my slave, said the siren. As the siren spoke, a strange light flashed in her dark blue eyes, exuding an indescribable demonic charm. When Zhouwen's gaze met the strange eyes, his eyes immediately glazed over as though he had been possessed. He walked towards the siren in a daze. Yes, that's it. Come to the Queen's embrace. Becoming my slave is a great honor for a human. The siren opened her arms and hugged Zhouwen like a mother. At the same time, her pale blue lips were about to press on Zhouwen's forehead. Zhouwen continued walking towards the siren in a daze, as though he didn't sense anything. All he could see were the siren's strange eyes. The siren's hands had already pressed down on Zhouwen's shoulders and her lips were about to press on his forehead. At that instant, Zhouwen's originally dull eyes suddenly turned clear. His left hand, which was wrapped in the lotus flower bracer, suddenly shot up. His palm carried an astral blade aura as he slashed at the siren's abdomen. With the support of the lotus bracer, the astral slashing saber chi condensed from 11 points of essence violently slashed at the sea demon's smooth abdomen, leaving a wound on it. This caused the beautiful face of the sea demon to be slightly stunned. It was unknown if she was too confident or if she didn't expect Zhouwen to remain lucid under her gaze, but the siren didn't react at all. She looked at Zhouwen in disbelief. However, Zhouwen didn't hesitate. In an instant, his entire body moved. His fists, feet, palms, elbows, and knees attacked the vital points of the sea demon like a storm. The mutated lotus flower ant and silver-winged flying ant were also summoned by Zhouwen. They attacked the siren from both sides, hoping to severely injure her in the shortest time possible, preventing her from counterattacking. Bang! 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 Zhouwen only saw the sea demon's arm move before he and his two companion beasts flew out at the same time. They slammed into the waterfall and bounced back to the ground. The sea demon stared coldly at Zhouwen as she stroked the wound on her abdomen. The wound had strangely healed without leaving a single scar. Humans are despicable. You don't listen when you're being nice. You want me to do it myself? The sea demon stared coldly at Zhouwen as she swung her tail, hoping to ride the waves towards Zhouwen. Bang! Just as the sea demon finished speaking, a hoof descended from the sky, slapping her and the conch to the ground. The seawater that enveloped the living room immediately scattered as the living room returned to its original state. Zhouwen saw that the sea demon was sprawled on the floor, unable to stand up no matter how hard she struggled. On her back, the white antelope stood leisurely, its 4 hooves stepping on the sea demon as though it wasn't stepping on a terrifying dimensional creature, but a piece of wood. Without another word, Zhouwen made the mutated lotus flower ant transform into an arm guard and slash at the sea demon's neck. The sea demon was most likely an epic creature. No matter what dropped after killing her, it could be sold for a good price. This was undoubtedly very tempting to Zhouwen, who lacked money. Of course, the main thing was to resolve any future problems. He couldn't let such a dangerous dimensional creature continue living. This was too dangerous for Zhouwen and the students beside him. Don't kill me. As long as you are willing to let me go, I can share a huge secret with you, the sea demon hurriedly shouted. However, Zhouwen ignored her. The sharp edge of the lotus arm guard slashed at her neck, but when the sharp blade slashed at the sea demon's seemingly fair neck, it only left a faint red mark. It had only sliced through her skin. Zhouwen was slightly alarmed. The lotus arm guard was already considered a top legendary weapon, but it could only slice through her skin. This sea demon was probably a top existence at the epic stage. Brother Antelope, why don't you help me finish her off? Zhouwen said as he looked at the antelope on the sea demon's back. Unless Zhouwen recovered his primordial energy and used astral slash blade with the lotus arm guard, it wouldn't be easy to kill this sea demon. Upon hearing Zhouwen's words, the sea demon hurriedly shouted, I really have a huge secret to share with you. I obtained the first order of chaos from the first god, Chaos. If you are willing to let me go, I can share it with you. What's the first order of chaos? Zhouwen's heart stirred as he asked the sea demon sprawled on the ground. Zhouwen had heard of the name Chaos before. He was the primordial god in Greek mythology. Some people called him Chaos, the earliest god born in Greek mythology. However, this god wasn't famous in the world, but his descendants were famous. Many people probably knew of them. For example, Zeus of Mount Olympus was the 3rd generation of the Chaos pantheon. Sea god Poseidon, goddess of wisdom Athena, and sun god Apollo were members of this pantheon. Some people said that Chaos was the celestial god of time, space, and spacetime. Others said that Chaos was chaos itself. In short, this god's status in Greek mythology was probably equivalent to the egg that Pangu had split open. When the sea demon said this name, Zhouwen was somewhat alarmed. Zhouwen had heard that many dimensional zones related to Zeus and the other gods had been discovered in the West District's dimensional zones. Even some dimensional zones of the 2nd generation Titan gods had been discovered, but he had never heard of any news regarding Chaos. The first order of Chaos is the source of Lord Chaos's power. In human terms, it's Lord Chaos's primordial energy art, the sea demon hurriedly said. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.